A big recap. Thank you to Megan and team for putting that together. Just does a pretty good job of recapping what we've been up to the last year as we pivoted from our real world community based events business to the virtual one with all of our live casts and roundtables. We kicked off this year on a pretty epic note with our big 2021 kickoff event. Last week, as I mentioned, I don't think you've ever seen a better group of sports marketers and Super Bowl advertisers on one stage. If you haven't seen on our site, most of those interviews are available on our on-demand section. We've been going all out on our Super Bowl coverage, and we're excited to continue that, as I mentioned, right now. So we can kick off our first session. We have Casey Urbis and Jim D'Antoni. Casey is the CMO of Rocket Mortgage, and we have Jim D'Antoni from Dish Media for our first session today. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to everybody attending here on Zoom. Welcome to everybody streaming on YouTube and on the other social channels. We're kicking off. So I see Jim here. Oh, I love the background. How you doing, Jim?
Good. How are you? How you doing, David?
I'm good. Welcome. I see Casey joining in. I think we got to get the video and audio turned on, but I see Casey seems to be joining in just a second. How you doing? What were you up to for the big game, Jim?
Watching at home, a little different this year. No big Super Bowl parties this year, but had a great time. Enjoyed the game and enjoyed all the advertising as well. Some really great spots, obviously.
Absolutely. Yeah, there were some really good ones, and I know you're going to get into it. Did you have assuming that the Rocket Mortgage ad was your favorite, that goes without saying, but did you have any other favorites while we wait for Casey to join in?
Yeah, I enjoyed the Bud Light ones, and even the NFL one was great as well. I thought the NFL spot they aired in pregame was fantastic. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about that. I know the team is working with Casey to get him on the stage. Yeah, I mean, personally, I love the Reddit ad. I thought, the Oatly one was funny because of how much everybody hated it and then loved it and then hated it again and then loved it again. It's very polarizing. I love the Anheuser-Busch one at the House family brands. Sometimes beer is more than just a beer. I thought that one really resonated. So yeah, I mean, lots to get into. I know the team just sent me a message. They're working with Casey. There's always a technical difficulty somewhere along the line, but he'll be joining in just a second.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Casey.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I sometimes have a face for radio, so why don't we'll get started with the audio part, and the team here will get the video handled.
All right. I love it. So Jim, then I will bow out. The virtual stage is yours. Casey, I'm glad that you're here. We can hear you perfectly. So we'll keep this rolling, and I'm excited to hear from you guys. So take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. Very excited about today's session. Real quick, my name is Jim D'Antoni, Director of National Sales for Dish Media. We offer data-driven solutions to marketers. We have specialized in a number of areas, most particularly addressable advertising. We helped pioneer the space a few years ago, and we developed a very unique set of capabilities. When we sell addressable advertising, we sell it across both Dish and Sling TV. And we own and operate Sling TV. We have the best-in-class programmatic solution out there for the OTT marketplace. And we have brand safe content, we have great tech, and we have great data that helps make TV buys smarter. But we're not here to talk about Dish Media. We're here to talk to Casey. So welcome, Casey.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me here today. It's an absolute pleasure.
Great. Yeah. So Casey's been CMO for Rocket Mortgage for just around 4 years, and that sounds like you've been pretty busy these last 9-10 months. A few things on your plate. Obviously most recently phenomenal results with the Super Bowl this past weekend, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I wanted to really just start with you just kind of mapping out and describing the organization that you lead, and why don't we just start with that? I know you have an in-house agency, but love to hear about that.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And starting as the first 17 years of my career, I worked for BBDO, which supported the Chrysler business. And then after BBDO, I joined Chrysler, FCA, now Stellantis, where we were solely dependent upon agencies. And now joined Quicken Loans and the Rocket Companies 4 years ago, we are an in-house agency. So now it's like the best of both worlds. Jim, we have a 300-person in-house agency team that, we work on everything from Super Bowl to t-shirts and everything in between. We've got over 100 creative team members, and, within our Rock family of companies and Rocket Companies portfolio, we're also the in-house agency for upwards of 14 brands at any given time. So we have a lot going on, not only with Rocket Mortgage and, being America's largest lender, but a number of our other fintech brands and supporting it as an in-house agency. So it's the best of both worlds. I mean, running an in-house agency is an absolute pleasure and blast. And, being the CMO and overseeing these brands, it's, for me, it's a very, very fulfilling, and I couldn't ask for a better company culture to be part of.
That's wonderful. We in our prep conversation, you had said your company embraces a number of isms, and one of them is "we'll figure it out."
Yes.
And I'm sure that came in handy in 2020. Love to hear more about that, and just curious whether that was put in place pre-pandemic.
Yeah, and great question. So, our chairman and founder, Dan Gilbert, started the company 35 years ago. And as he started to build the company, he realized that in order to have the growth and build the right culture, we needed to have foundational values that helped us drive business decisions, but also how we conduct ourselves outside of the office. And so these isms were formed. You mentioned we have 1920 isms in which they are ingrained in everything we do. And you mentioned, quite honestly, one of my favorite isms is "we'll figure it out." And I have probably used that, Jim, no less than 5 times a day since we moved into work from home on March 11th, where we're 98%. We have over 20,000 team members here in downtown Detroit, and 98% of us have been home working very safely since March 11th of last year. And, we took the "we'll figure it out" and we utilized that every step of the way, especially in marketing.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right, so take us back to March, April. Everything has gone sideways, or is in the process of going sideways. How did you restructure how you communicate with your leadership team, and then ultimately with the larger organization?
Yeah, and so March 11th, I mean, there's always dates in your career you specifically remember. March 11th for me is a huge one, in which we had made the decision as an organization to go work from home as a test, because we weren't sure what was happening. And so we went home for a 3-day test. And if you remember what March 11th looked like, that was a Wednesday, right? I'd gone over to one of our agencies because I don't know how to work from home. I've had to figure that out. And I was watching the players were starting down in Florida, NCAA college conference tournaments. And if you remember that 2 or 3 hour window where the NBA said they're going to suspend the season, players were being taken off the court at college championships. Yes. The PJ Tour had stopped. So, we're like, oh, this looks like we're not going to just be doing a 2 or 3 day, test. This is going to be. Yeah. So thankfully for us, one is technology. I mean, we are a technology company at heart. And thankfully for us, we had an enterprise. We use Microsoft Teams. And 2 years ago, I mean, we had Google Hangout and Slack, and, it was all over the place. Thankfully, we made that decision as an organization to have an enterprise communications platform. And old dogs like me, I had to learn quick because I'm still a paper guy and I'm not into video chats. But I had to quickly really figure it out and adapt to that new way of doing business. And, sometimes they say crises create opportunities. And so, we were quickly at home. We were only 4 weeks removed from our Super Bowl campaign with Jason Momoa. We were about to roll out new NCAA work. And I quickly realized that week of the 16th, wow, as a brand, we have to be really careful that you don't become tone deaf quick. And so literally in 3-4 days, we shot actually in the studio I'm sitting in right now, which you'll see here shortly. We ended up shooting a brand campaign with our CEO telling America that we're here for you. And so in 3 days, we created, developed, shot, and trafficked and got on air a message that we thought was important to tell the American public. And so along the way, all right, we had another campaign, a UGC campaign with Everybody Knows a Hero, where our team members submitted videos simply thanking those that are essential workers and are heroes to them. And then we're like, okay, as a brand, we need to think about how are we going to bring a new brand campaign to life. And we were one of the first brands in America Jim, to shoot a full-scale national broadcast commercial, and we figured it out. And that just led, further and further between a Rocket Mortgage Classic, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and we kept applying that in our Super Bowl development and our partnership with the NFL, which obviously we just had a great weekend enjoying.
Yeah, I mean, that's great that within 3 days you could, get a spot up and running and have, be able to pivot that. That again shows the strength of the in-house agency, just cut right to it, and phenomenal work there, no doubt. And then did you, the tone, you just wanted to take more of a "we're there for you" kind of tone to the creative, and has that lasted?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, let's turn back the hands of time. That week of the 16th, we were all at home. I was watching more, we'll call it video, whether it be linear or digital, whatever it might be, than I ever do. And it was really interesting that week. I'm watching, and not to pick on a category, but I was seeing like tier 2 auto ads, and it was, the sale, and, and then as you're watching the news and everyone's just scrambling to understand, what does this mean for America? People are asking a lot of questions, right? You had politicians talking, about government assistance programs, whatever it might be. And so thankfully for us, we realized like, wow, this is not the right time to be on with a Jason Momoa or a college basketball, which obviously the term was being canceled. So what is the right message? And there is no playbook. I mean, you and I talked about this yesterday. I mean, it's not like we could go back to the pandemic marketer's playbook from 1975 or 2005. This was new to all of us. And so a lot of it was trusting your gut. Trust in your gut. I mean, one of the things we think is like, think, communicate, and go execute, and do it at the speed of the game. And we had, and a lot of brands did this, but you had to operate at the speed of the game, and it's paid off. It's paid off because we're getting smarter, more efficient, and we're able to pivot on a dime, whether it be creatively or even from a media standpoint, right? This is better than anyone, but think about how quickly we saw American consumption habits shifting, whether it be from programming or linear into the offline and the CTT, OTV, like digital video. As a 24/7, 365 advertiser, we were also trying to reimagine our media approach and making sure that we were putting our message, and aligning it to how we were seeing consumer consumption adjusting or shifting real time.
Great stuff. All right, before we get into the golf and the Super Bowl, just one more on your team and structure. I mean, how do you stay connected now with your team from afar? Obviously, people are getting more used to remote communication, video conferencing. But is there any insights and tricks that you've learned to best connect?
Yes, and I always subscribe to this, and our CEO Jay Farner exemplifies this as probably the best of any CEO I've ever seen. You cannot over communicate when it comes to talking about your company, the culture, and what may be happening within the organization. So our CEO is in front of our entire company, again, 20,000 plus here in downtown Detroit, every week, talking about business and culture and things that we're doing as an organization. I have that same philosophy. I'm in front of my 300 plus team members once or twice a week, whether it's live or I'm walking my dog and just filming some updates or whatever it might be. Obviously, let's utilize the technology that we have to open up those lines of communications. And it's not one way, it has to be two way. One of our things here at Rocket Companies is feedback is a gift. And, I promise you that I've got 17,000, 20,000 people giving me feedback every single day, but the most important feedback comes from my team. And how can I be better as a leader? I believe being a good leader is being a servant to your people. And how can I be a better leader? And how can we continue to foster and develop a great culture and teamwork effort within an organization?
I love it. Yeah, the two-way communication is so vital. Some people forget that, and clearly you haven't, which is awesome. So let's transition to the Rocket Mortgage Classic. You had the inaugural entitlement in 2019, bringing PGA golf back to the Detroit metro area. A lot of excitement around that. Great win by Nate Lashley, inspirational.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sure you're looking to back that up, getting ready, and that all changed in March. So you were originally supposed to have the tournament, I think, in May or June, and then obviously that went sideways. What was that like when you got the call from the PGA Tour?
Yeah,
Or, you know,
going back to the ISM, and we'll figure it out. That's another great example. You know, in 2019, that was our inaugural Rocket Mortgage Classic, and we have a mantra here. When we develop big platform programs, first best only, and it was a first best and only. We were the most awarded PGA Tour event on Detroit. We were really excited with the results and obviously with our community efforts. And so we were looking to double down going to 2020. And then when the pandemic came about and we realized, wow, we're not going back, meaning sports isn't just going to take a 2-week hiatus. The PGA Tour came to us in mid-April and said, all right, we're going to start back up. We're going to start back up at the beginning of June. And this is where the Rocket Mortgage Classic can take place. And so we had to make a decision. You could imagine in the middle of April, in certain areas, Detroit was a hotbed for COVID. We were trying to make a decision on bringing an event to Detroit in last week of June and July. So we consulted with state, local, city, community leaders. They gave us the confidence to make the decision. And literally, Jim, we had to reimagine the entire tournament 6 weeks out. Not only from an experience for the players and their team, but also like, hey, when you do a tournament like this, you're obviously shining a spotlight on your brand and also the city. And I couldn't be more proud. I mean, we were the fourth PGA Tour event to come back. Viewing was strong, 100% up on Thursday, Friday, double digits, 25% on Saturday and Sunday. The brand looked fantastic on camera. We had Bryson DeChambeau, bombing 350 off the tee and just crushing the course. Yeah. And the most exciting thing for us, Jim, is we found it as an avenue to reimagine our community efforts. And so an unfortunate spotlight that was shined upon our city with the pandemic is 30% of Detroit residents do not have access to the internet. And let that sink in for a second. In 2021, wow. 30% of our Detroit residents don't have access to the internet. And I don't care. You can think of how that impacts an 8-year-old with education, a 28-year-old who's looking for a job in career development, or an 80-year-old, an 8 to 80 that in the new world of telemedicine that we have. So we use that as our platform to announce our Changing the Course and Connect 313 initiative. We raised over $2.6 million, and we have a plan in 5 years to bring digital access and bridging that digital divide for every resident within 5 years. And the Rocket Mortgage Classic was a great platform to kick that off, and it's really picking up momentum. So again, we figured it out for the Rocket Mortgage Classic, and the crises sometimes develops opportunities, and we seize that opportunity.
Yeah, and again, that ability to be flexible and pivot quickly and accurately is so key in those kind of moments. Any other surprises, good or bad, in that experience?
Sure. Well, it's also, first best only means you're walking through with, you don't know, and it's a little bit of fear of the unknown. There's always going to be maybe things, one of our approaches is after an event, it's immediately like, how can we get better? The feedback is a gift. So yes, as a CMO, I'm going to give feedback to partners, whether it be a media partner, an agency, whatever it might be, but we expect that feedback to come back to us. And how can we be better as, we'll call it the client or, a sponsor of something. And that's how you're only going to get better is, having that two-way communication internally with your team, but also with your partners. So sure, there's some things that were unexpected, but I wouldn't change one thing in how we brought the 2020 Rocket Mortgage Classic. And it's coming back this year, last week of July, June 28th to July 4th at the Detroit Golf Club. We hope to have fans there. We saw fans this weekend at Waste Management, albeit there wasn't 20,000 people, on the 16th hole, but, we hope to have, we're planning to have fans here for the Rocket Mortgage Classic and, shine the great spotlight on our brand and our great city of Detroit.
Yeah, it does make a difference. But back in July, the brand looked awesome on the golf course. I watched all 4 rounds, and I guess you can approach that a little differently with whether there's fans or not fans there. But you had that one par 5 on the back 9 that has a great body of water in front of it. And you had just great signage, and it popped. There's no question about it. And having DeChambeau win, he's been probably the most talked about, PGA Tour player in the last 12 months, is just cherry on the top, which is great. Anything else to share on the golf front?
Just really look forward, the response from the community and corporate partners. We're fortunate here in Detroit. We have a lot of media companies that have brick and mortar in Detroit. working with the OEMs and certainly Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage, and so blessed with our community and corporate support. And my phone's ringing and LinkedIn is popping all the time, where everyone's I think a lot of people, I'm certain, to use a phrase from a recent Super Bowl ad, I'm certain that people are excited to get back and enjoy some great events in person. And we're seeing it already happen across the country, and we can't wait for that to happen here in Detroit.
Excellent. Okay, let's talk about the Super Bowl. I mean, just phenomenal results and success this past weekend. I think this is your second year as an NFL official. You've been in the Super Bowl for about 3-4 years. So when did you start thinking about how do we amp up our presence, or were you even thinking that, or did that develop along the way? But take us to the origin.
Sure. It's a little bit of a two edged answer, but no matter what, if we were going to be in the game as an advertiser, we have a big part in the Super Bowl, in which, as we launched our NFL partnership in 2019, it launched with the Rocket Mortgage Super Bowl Squares, the largest and first, obviously, Super Bowl Squares partner with the NFL. That was a big success in 19. A 20 Super Bowl. We knew obviously it was going to be part of the 21 Super Bowl. So now, no matter if we're in the game or not, and that program and platform continues to get stronger and stronger. We just saw our final numbers yesterday, and we smoked our 2020 goals, which is fantastic. But as an advertiser, usually our process is funny. I was talking to some other CMOs last night. I heard a CMO tell me, like, we didn't start thinking about it till after Thanksgiving, which gave me immediate chest pains, because I don't know how you could go about it. We start thinking about it like April, May. Then we'll start working. Even though we're an in-house agency, Jim, we'll ask outside creative agencies to pitch ideas. We'll call it a jump ball, and so that process starts in June, July. And this year we started right about then. And then as a company, is it right? You have to make that decision. Are we a brand that's going to be in the Super Bowl, which is unlike any others? But 2020 for us, Jim, was a fantastic year when it came to home purchase, and knowing that home, and this is obviously everybody here can relate to this. Home means more to people today than probably ever before, and we know Americans want a choice when it comes to hopefully buying a dream home in our great country. And so that gave us the confidence to be in the game. But creatively, as we went through the iteration process, we saw over 150 ideas, and one of the earliest ones we saw, Jim, was the Certain campaign with Tracy Morgan, and Tracy was in it. Sometimes you see a cadre of celebrities that could fit. And when I first saw it, the Zoom went down, and I leaned back, and I'm looking at my team virtually, and I'm like, well, we might have it here. And it went through its process. I mean, we eventually had to approach Tracy, and we're very, very fortunate, Jim. This is our fourth Super Bowl with Rocket Mortgage, but in the last 3, we've worked with Keegan-Michael Key, Jason Momoa last year, and Tracy. And each one of these, the question I always get asked is, how are they? And I'll tell you, who you see, in interviews, and, Tracy on Howard Stern or on his SNL, he is who you see, and just a fantastic guy. And very early on, the first time I met him on a Zoom, he's like, I want to be part of this creative process. And so he jumped in early on the creative development. And so that really pays off once you get to set and you shoot it and you're in the edit. I just talked to Tracy yesterday, and he says he goes, the best compliment I got is my 8-year-old daughter. They talked about the commercial in my daughter's classroom, and she was super proud of her dad. He goes, after all that's said and done, knowing that you're a hit in your kid's classroom is the best feedback of all. And
the most important KPI.
Yeah, the most important KPI, and making sure your CEO's happy. That's my most important CEO. And thankfully, as we woke up Monday morning and my phone started blowing up, number 1, number 2 on USA Today ad meter, which is, that's America voting. And, we're the first brand in 14 years. I mean, to be in the same conversation as Bud Light, as the last brand to go 1-2. An interesting fact, we're the first financial commercial, if you will, to hit number 1 on USA Today ad meter since 1989, which I looked it up. It's an old American Express commercial. But that's exciting. I mean, normally when it comes to the USA Today ad meter and America voting, the tried and true categories are always hitting that top 5 or 10. Automotive, beer, soda, top. Restaurants, and certainly over the last 10, 15 years, your Googles, Amazons, other .coms, that are such powerhouse brands. And so for us to be, a commodity based brand to, last year we're number 5 with Jason Momoa, this year 1 and 2, it feels pretty damn good.
Yeah, it must. And it's a tribute to where you've taken the brand and how you're able to communicate your message, but do it in a very relatable way and fun way. And it obviously stood out.
Well, you're right, Jim.
Sunday.
When it comes to that, like any other CMO, when I start looking at ideas, or we start looking at ideas, you have that philosophical discussion with yourself. And this year, I'm sure every CMO, there was 657 commercials that ran, let's call it 50 brands. I'm sure every CMO came to the crossroad in that development process of, is this the year that we're serious, or is funny going to be tone deaf, or whatever it might be? Thankfully for us as a brand, I think we do a very nice job of delivering a piece of creative and messaging. I would say a piece of good creative. It should educate. It should educate, engage, and entertain. And so, so that gave it all right, that's who we are. This is not the year to be serious, and right or wrong. And so we wanted to go towards the humor. We thought America wants to, lean in and have fun and be able to smile and that. And then also with the uses of celebrity, I mean, of those 57 ads, I bet you almost every one had a celebrity. What I'm really proud of is we don't use celebrities in our ads just to have them as a celebrity. We have the celebrity in it, and they're executing the brand idea all the way through. And that's part of our little bit, we'll call it, I would lie to you if I were to say that's really strategic in how we go about it, but it ends up, that's where it is. Like, we just don't want to work with a talent just to have him or her. We want them to help us execute the brand idea.
Excellent. And was it always going to be a 60? And then you went with 2 60s, but was there ever, maybe a little run of 30 or, any of that kind of thinking?
Yeah, a great question. I would, again, lie to you if I were to say we have this huge strategic discussion about that. This is my 6th Super Bowl campaign I've been blessed to be a part of, and 3 of them were on the automotive side, and 3 here with Rocket Mortgage. And to me, it's the 60 just allows you to do that much more storytelling, right? And you could be able to, the 30 happens so fast. And so, you've seen advertisers obviously do 2 minutes. And for us, I really believe that a 60 is the sweet spot, because you're able to, tell the story, but also deliver upon brand promise, and ideally tie it back at the end. And sometimes a 30, and certainly we could have gone a 30, but I just don't think you're able to accomplish all those things in a short form, especially on the stage of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, sure. You also mentioned, some brands have their creative, in the can, September, and even though you were concepting early and strategizing, it sounds like you did some of the shooting on the back end, and I'd love to hear a little bit about how that came together, editing until a day or 2 before.
Yeah, it was, I'll lift the hood up a little bit on, our process. And I fair warn you that it's not for the faint of heart. So, we're developing concepts in June and July, but like anything else, you've got a lot of other things going. You're looking at annual planning, your annual budget planning. You're trying to think about how to wrap up the year. So, we are usually landing on what the idea is. We'll call it the end of November. We've had preliminary conversations with talent. So then you got to, all right, jump in and, all right, is the talent still available? You could imagine how many scripts, Super Bowl level talent get every year. So, over the last 3 years, I mean, we'll call this off the record, but it's now on the record. I mean, we generally don't shoot until the first week of January. And despite our best efforts, and even though we're a partner with the NFL, I cannot get Roger Goodell to push back the date of the game. So it is an absolute whirlwind push. And the last 2 years, we're literally, the last week is, my creative agency production are probably doing, all-nighters. And I know I'm on calls and reviewing work that last week till generally 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. This year, we did not ship our 2 spots for with Tracy Morgan until I think it was 3 o'clock on Saturday morning. And
wow,
slept most of the day. And then it's also then, all right, then we're going to activate it. And we have a really robust war room that we activate not only Super Bowl squares, but everything Super Bowl related. The night of, that thing runs from about 4 in the afternoon, and I signed off around 2 a.m. Sunday night, Monday morning.
Wow, that's yeah, that's where the isms come in handy. I'm sure we'll figure it out. But and then 260s in the Super Bowl, obviously a massive investment, and you want to support that and amplify that outside the game. Can you take us into some of your thinking, whether it be working with social media platforms, on how you went about that?
Yeah, and first and foremost, we're fortunate with Rocket Mortgage. We're an always-on advertiser, as I mentioned earlier. So we're on 24/7, 365. We're not flight. We don't flight. We don't have flight weeks, and we're off and we're back on. And so, yes, we're going to be in the Super Bowl. I'm also a believer as a Super Bowl advertiser that you see some brands, and maybe it's because that's who they are as a brand, or they don't have the ability to extend and amplify a campaign and sustain it for much further past Super Bowl. I never want to find myself where we're a one and done when it comes to a Super Bowl idea. I believe in being able to develop a Super Bowl campaign that is campaignable over the course of time. So, going into the Super Bowl, we look at, obviously, you're always going to have that 60 seconds in the linear space, but then what is happening leading up to it, but most importantly after it. So we have a whole teaser strategy. We do not release our commercial before the game. The last 2 years, I think we've had some really, really good, effective, creative teaser with Jason Momoa last year, this year with Tracy, Liza Koshy, Dave Bautista, and Joey Bosa with the LA Chargers, which tease it, gave nothing away. But man, as soon as that spot airs, then you should see our war room. It lights up like a holiday tree, and it's like activate, 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 listening, engaging with other brands, utilizing our partnerships to extend and amplify, because an audience of Ricky Fowler may be different than the audience of a Dave Bautista fan. So how can we utilize our partnerships to extend and amplify? One of the things that we talk about at Rocket Mortgage is tying threads. We do a lot of tying threads leading up to and certainly afterwards. And sometimes you got to act real time. So as a brand like Cadillac, or Vroom or State Farm engage with us, we are prepared to immediately engage with them, because it lifts, it lifts everybody up. So, and now we're 3 days, we're 3 days into it, and I'm still reviewing work that we have a lot more work to get out that comes as a part of this campaign. Literally, we will have hundreds and hundreds of assets that come out of our Super Bowl production.
That's terrific. Fantastic. I mean, and then you'll have that theme that you can just keep re-amplifying or going back to if as you see fit moving forward, which is phenomenal. Anything else just Super Bowl related that you want the audience to hear?
Yeah, I mean, again, the Super Bowl process, not for the faint of heart. And what my advice to marketers, and I spoke to some CMOs last night, and I had a couple email me last night on LinkedIn, and they were asking me about my philosophy when it comes to Super Bowl. And 2 CMOs I spoke to had just gone through their first one, and what I reminded them was, and I have to tell myself this every time, there are a lot of I was away for a month from my wife and kids, shooting and quarantining and being safe and protecting my family. And so I didn't see my wife and kids for a month. And there's late, and those are a lot of other work that has to go on at the same exact time. It's not just all about Super Bowl. And every time where you want to get frustrated or you're not sure, or you're questioning yourself, I try to take a deep breath and I look in the mirror or say to myself, if this were easy, everybody would do it. And, to me, that's my solace of just like, you're going to get through this. And, knock on wood, everything will go well. And I gotta be out though, every time about this year, I'm like, I want to take a year off, but man, I start getting the itch around March or April. And I think certainly this year, I'm certain that we're going to be working on Super Bowl sooner than later.
Phenomenal. Well, I mean, a lot of marketers have not had the same year as you've had, so at this point I may say, well, how do you find some silver linings? But you've had tremendous success. Love to hear about how do you sustain that, and how do you take, success in 2021 and obviously early 2021 and play that out for the rest of this year.
Yeah. And, 2020 was a fantastic year for us, and we're very, very thankful and blessed to have that. But, there's also, for those of us who have been around a while, There's the old Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones, the old Cowboys. How about them Cowboys era of, you get about 24 hours here to celebrate. And it's like, all right, how are we going to get better? So yes, we'll figure it out. One of our other isms that we have here, Jim, is the inches. The inches are everywhere around us. And for us, it's taking what happened in 2020. How can we continuously find those inches via feedback, client feedback, agency feedback, whatever it may be as a marketer? And how can we take those inches and build ourselves to have an even a better 2021? And it's all about our clients. I mean, we are client focused day in and day out. And for us, it's, and also as a leader for me here, it's, I wouldn't have the privilege of doing Super Bowl if we didn't honestly believe here in Detroit is you need to love your team members and love your clients. If you don't do either of those two things, we're not sitting here on Brand Innovators talking about Super Bowl.
100%. No, that's great. Here's a question for you. I mean, I think, the success you've had may answer this, but it says, why advertise in the Super Bowl at all? How do you justify the expense? And I worked at ESPN for 16 years and have had that kind of philosophical conversation over the years. Yeah. But how does it provide true ROI is the question from the person.
Yeah, great question. I mean, ROI. So, to make that level of investment, I don't care if it's a 30, a 60, or 260s. Make no mistake, we are not going to be in the advertiser without ROI or KPIs. But what I also, if I were talking to other CMOs and other marketers, just to be in the Super Bowl, to say you've been in the Super Bowl is, I think you're setting yourself up for potential disappointment. If you're going to be in the Super Bowl, you have got to be all in. All in creatively from an investment standpoint, and then being able to activate all the way across. So, of course, as an advertiser and marketer, I'm not going to see all the immediate results. It's not like the old NASCAR automotive days of win on Sunday, sell on Monday. But I can tell you, 3 days in, I mean, we're seeing almost triple digit site traffic. We're seeing really strong mid to lower funnel conversion metrics, and then also for us, as I look at it monthly, but more importantly, quarterly, as I look at our brand health metrics, what does this campaign do? How is it helping elevate? Yes, of course, brand awareness. You buy yourself into brand awareness, aided or unaided. But more importantly, what is a work in a campaign like that do to strengthening positive opinion or consideration? More top of the middle, top middle to middle of the funnel, and then if you've got your retail channel in place. I mean, we're very much like automotive, Jim, where I don't have 4,000 rooftops I try to drive traffic to, back in my automotive days, but I've got 4,500, 5,000 bankers kitty corner from us when they're in the office in downtown Detroit. And we got to drive really good traffic to those bankers. And, ultimately you're going to be judged on how, as a marketer, how you're doing at the retail channel. But it's important, as a brand to make sure you've got a really healthy top of the funnel, and being in the Super Bowl can be a great way to help foster and strengthen that top of the funnel along the way. But you got to be all in, and we believe in being all in, and that's who we are as a company and organization. And for me, Super Bowl, again, not for the faint of heart, and it's the best place I think to put your brand. Some brands just utilize it to launch a new product or service. And for us, we haven't had a new product or service, if you will, but we see as an opportunity to continuously, strengthen our brand message to America.
Excellent. I have another question here from the audience. When it comes to communicating with your consumers, how do you think about brand purpose, and how does that impact your approach to marketing?
Yeah, wow, that could be another hour in itself. And there's one of Dan Gilbert, our chairman. One of the things we talk about here at the Rocket Companies is doing good by doing well. And we have a for more than profit. But real talk, American consumers expect that a big company, a big organization does the right thing in the community. Make no mistake about it. We don't, but for us, with our for more than profit philosophy, our team members here, we give over 250,000 volunteer hours every year. My marketing team alone last year, Jim, 300 team members, we had 22,000 hours of volunteer hours that my team put in the gave in the marketplace. So we focus on education, placemaking, veteran homelessness. I mean, again, much like the digital divide that I mentioned here in Detroit, Do you know that there are 40,000 veterans in our country that are homeless? And I don't care what race, color,
Amazing.
creed, political affiliation you have. I don't know anyone in my life that thinks that, a hero who comes home and kisses the ground should also have to sleep on it. And that's a big focus of us for us. So yes, there is the big brand in the Super Bowl, but there are moments, and we do this particularly around the holidays and tying with the NFL and their salute to service. We have a community message that is always there. It's an always on strategy. And then we'll peak it, if you will, when we tie into some of our partnerships, particularly with the NFL in November and salute to service. And we shine that focus on our veteran homeless community solutions built for zero, which addresses the veteran homelessness. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, Jim, our large focus with the Rocket Mortgage Classic, which is a year-round effort with our Bridging the Digital Divide and Changing the Course.
That's great. Yeah, both national efforts as well as localized into your Detroit community, which
absolutely
is phenomenal.
we believe in having national presence with some of those initiatives, but also very important is making sure we doing good by doing well, and that includes the communities that we serve in Cleveland, Phoenix, Detroit.
Great. And here's another question on leadership. And it's a little broad, but what traits do you think are most important to have to be a successful leader? And then maybe you want to answer that, and then how that served you well in all these last 9-10 months.
Yeah. And, people ask me about leadership, and I was fortunate that I became a leader at a very young age. I was 27 years old, was named a VP of the agency. I was leading like 9 field offices, tier 2 automotive. And what I tell people this now, and they can't believe it, is like, I never once had, I never went to like Zig Ziglar or like Franklin Covey. Like, I never had any leadership training. My leadership training over time was emulating and looking up to leaders and mentors, whether they do them or not. But even more importantly was looking at leaders within organizations that I saw things that he or she did that did not translate to who I am. And since I joined Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage 4 years ago, the ability I have to grow and learn as a leader is just unbelievable. And I've really changed quite a bit over the last 4 years. And one of the things Dan Gilbert talks about, this is a great one, is I never learn anything while I'm talking. If I'm not talking, I'm not learning. If I'm talking, I'm not learning. And so the best piece of advice I'd have for a leader, I don't care if you're a junior leader or a senior leader, is listen. Listen to your clients, listen to your team members, listen to the feedback that you get. What you do with it is as much as important as just the listening part. It's easy to listen and then shuffle off to the side. It's what you do with that. It's what we do with that information. I think that really, truly separates the really good leaders from maybe leaders that aren't as strong.
That's phenomenal. That goes back to the two-way communication you alluded to earlier, which is great. And yeah, and I agree with you. I learn most by asking good questions, of my team, and just providing that kind of environment, which is great. It sounds like you're doing the same, which is terrific. Let me ask you. There's another question from the audience. How do you determine where to spend time with emerging technologies, and how do you maintain that balance? Because linear TV is still a massive chunk. OTT is obviously new in the marketplace, but any insights on emerging technologies?
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, we're fortunate with Rocket Mortgage in particular to be an always on advertiser. And one of the things we really pride ourselves on, and we work with Universal McCann as our our media plan and buying agency, is I always want to be at the forefront of technology. I'd rather be an early adopter versus a mid or late adopter. And so, I'd be hard pressed to find many channels, if you will, that we haven't invested in, tested, and maybe been a part of. Podcast is a great example. When I first got here, I really literally knew nothing about podcasts. We were never able to be in the audio space back in my automotive days. And here we were an early investor, if you will, in podcast. And, I see the results that come out of it. Same with OTT, the OTT connected TV space. I think about the world, and even though there's such a continued fragmentation, still the linear and, broadcast space, still highest reach, highest mass medium. But wow, how exciting is it for us particularly with how we approach it creatively, trying to have a relevant contextual creative message and be able to talk to consumers at the right place, right time. Every marketer will tell you that. But for us, and it's also working with, working with our partners. I don't want to name them by name, but, big Silicon Valley, partners that they're in our office, if you will, back when we did it, but we're talking to them monthly in our office, talking about our business. And I want to be an alpha. I want to be an alpha or a beta tester for some of these things that we have come about, and coming back to CTT OTV, like we saw that you and I talked about what did we see in the change in the marketplace, but during COVID, but as we saw consumption changing, like we partnered up with Roku, for example. So as the NBA started back up, we saw the consumer shift, a lot of consumers shifting into the, the OTT CTV connected space. And we jumped on with a partner like Roku, and you guys, like, let's make sure that we're there. And so we're always looking to test. And, that's how you learn as a marketer is, you listen, understand if it fits in your plan. If not, test it. It's okay if it tests and it doesn't work. Can you learn from it and maybe test again? Or is it, all right, I'm glad we tried it. And so I'd much rather be, at the forefront of it versus, a wait and see.
100%. That's great. That's great insight. Thank you. And then I think you alluded to, the phones blowing up once that spot aired, but how do you take that, the media campaign and merge it with, with your infrastructure so you can, take the leads that develop from it, et cetera, while you're still, you've elevated the brand awareness, but now it's like, all right, how do we convert, if you will?
You're right. Because if it doesn't convert, we're not doing Super Bowl next year. Let's have real talk there. That's one of in that instance, like, how do you take the 60-second TVC Super Bowl ad and drive that all the way through the funnel and, creative and messaging? I think, quite honestly, Jim, this is where having an in-house agency, it really, really benefits. In my previous life, I'd have 15 agencies sitting around a table, and you're literally, my job was like Peyton Manning walking up to a line, and, yelling Omaha and trying to make sure the wide receiver ran across the line, the defense, the offensive lineman pulled to the left. Here with having an in-house agency, my we'll call it mid to lower funnel team. So our SEO, SEM, third-party lead by acquisition, our email, our direct mail follow-up, all the targeted digital and social. They're in the room with us as we're developing the Super Bowl campaign. So I'm not a believer of just like you come back from the shoot and you throw the film over the wall and you're like, all right, have at it, email or direct mail or social or PR or .com. They're in that room with us. And quite honestly, when we go flip cameras on, Jim, I could have feedback from the email team that says, hey, this type of content or this type of whatever performs best. And so while we're there, we're literally capturing hundreds of pieces of content, as I mentioned, that it'll never see the air of the time of day in the linear or maybe the digital social space, but it works for direct mail or .com or, whatever it might be. And so that's how, you got to tie it and drive it all the way through. Sometimes you see brands miss it. So how can you take the success or the big spend that you're doing with a Super Bowl campaign and drive it all the way through? And that's one of the benefits of having an in-house agency is that we can all march to that same tune.
I love that. Again, you're not playing telephone. Everyone's there in the room. Inspiration.
One team. Yeah, we have a philosophy of one team, one goal, and it's not the area of business you're on. It's what you're working on, and how can we work best as a team.
That's awesome. Thank you, Casey. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm good. It pains me that we have to wrap this up. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I've been taking a lot of notes. I love the leadership advice. I love the deep dive into the Super Bowl ad and the surrounding efforts. This was really great. And like I said, it really pains me that we have to wrap this up. So we'll have to schedule part 2 for the conversation, hopefully sometime soon. But this was really phenomenal. And I mean, who can't, what football fan can't immediately hear in their head Peyton Manning yelling Omaha
That's
at the line, right? But this was so fantastic. So Jim, really appreciate you coming in here and moderating. Casey, I know your phone's been blowing up, your email's been blowing up. So again, we really appreciate you taking the time today to share with our community and go behind the scenes a little bit. So we really appreciate it and want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Everyone have a blessed day.
Absolutely.
You too. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, guys. Take care.
All right. Well, that was a fantastic way to kick off our program today. We are going to keep things rolling. We have a longtime brand innovators community member and speaker, Jill Kress, the Vice President and Head of Consumer Marketing at PayPal. We have Ken Harlan from Mobile Fuse. How you doing, Jill?
Hi.
Welcome, welcome. Ken, how are you?
Hey, good, David. How are you?
I'm good. Great to see you both. I know we've got a half hour set for this, so you don't want to hear from me. Nobody wants to hear from me. So you guys, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Thanks,
Awesome.
David.
Thanks, David. Thanks, David. And people do want to hear from you. But Jill, this is going to be great. I've loved getting to know you. Before we get started, I thought it'd be a great idea for people to hear a little bit about your background, because you have a phenomenal background. And so could you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ken. Happy to be doing this chat with you. I am currently at PayPal looking after our PayPal brand as well as Venmo and all of our consumer marketing activity. It has been an incredible run. I come at this with a long history in the payments and tech category. I spent the good majority of my career and life, as I look back on it, at MasterCard. I spent 22 years there and did lots of different things from sales to strategy. The last thing I did at MasterCard was look after our priceless platforms and look and transformed those into digital assets and programs and platforms. And it was an amazing place to grow up as a human and as an executive. Yep. And in between my kind of trajectory in payments, I spent 3 years at National Geographic, where I was the chief marketing officer. And that was another incredible brand to work on, and was a part of taking one of the most iconic brands in the space of purpose in the planet and working on ways to take a much loved physical experience through its iconic magazine and bring it into the digital age. Lots of focus on social and the incredible work that the team did there and making it the most followed brand on social media with well over 100 million Instagram followers. So feel lucky to have worked on so many great and relevant brands in my career.
It's great. Thanks, Jill. And just for the audience, I know many people know me from doing these prior. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and to answer one of the questions already on the Q&A, those diplomas are not mine, they're my wife's. So I'm more of a business startup, folks. I founded Mobile Fuse 10 years ago. We work with many agencies and brands, specifically on our Receptive Moments platform, building out a lot of great creative for folks. So, all right. So let's talk about PayPal and what's going on over there, because there's a lot going on. There's a major shift that we talked about this, right? And can you explain to the audience a little bit about what that shift is that's going on in PayPal? Because PayPal obviously was really founded in the electronic world, in the internet world, right? And I've always thought of it originally as a way you could pay for things online. So what's going on over there?
It's a great time to be at PayPal. It is energized and intense and ambitious. So yeah, this version of PayPal was founded about 6 years ago. It was a spin-off from eBay. And our CEO, Dan Schulman, came to start this version of PayPal. And one of the things that's been really rewarding about working at PayPal is our belief in our mission, which is to democratize financial services. And everything that we're doing is really leading towards that, and really taking our fundamental value prop of facilitating digital payments and expanding that into a full suite of financial solutions for consumers as we expand the functionality that lives in our digital wallet that consumers access through our app. And so it's really been accelerated as a result of COVID. You know, COVID really supercharged this shift from physical to digital shopping. There's an incredible stat from McKinsey In the US alone, US e-commerce penetration experienced 10 years of growth in 3 months.
Wow.
And so when you look at that kind of fundamental shift, as a platform, we really wanted to make sure we were ready to meet our consumers where they were. They were wanting to shop at more places more often. We saw that more than 40% of consumers shifted their shopping from physical stores into the digital space, and so that meant doing more in the way of educating consumers, bringing more small businesses onto our platform, and launching solutions that made it easier for consumers to use PayPal. So while we are proudly digital first, one of the things that was really important to our consumers and to our merchants was to ensure that as consumers were in the physical world, there were safe ways to pay and that they could pay touch free. And so we accelerated our plans to launch physical acceptance through QR codes. So there's been a big focus on that, really understanding that consumers were looking for financial flexibility. So launching our buy now, pay later product, a pay in 4 installment program to give people more control and flexibility. Launching a crypto solution. So really bringing to bear over the last year a lot of the roadmap and vision that was intended to deliver that democratization of financial inclusion for the world.
So you mentioned QR codes, right? And historically, obviously, most consumers don't think of that as a payment method, right? Right. It's typically credit card, you type in your numbers, or you insert your card or swipe your card, right? And QR codes historically, I mean, the last time I used a QR code was to look at a menu outside of a restaurant, right, outdoors, and the menu came up. So tell us the experience and how a QR code is used and why PayPal decided on that.
Yeah, QR codes are certainly not new, but they have definitely had a renaissance and lots of momentum as a result of COVID. The use case that you shared is a really strong example of, again, I think, meeting consumers and businesses where they are right now, which is facilitating access to information and commerce through your phone, which we're all so comfortable with, right? Everyone touches their phone, you scan the QR code. And I'm sure everyone's experienced the menu functionality so that people feel more comfortable and confident as they get out and get back into restaurants. And we have applied that to how consumers can access their funds across both PayPal and Venmo. And so it was a way for us to bridge that gap between the digital world and the physical world. So, we've got 2 use cases for it. One, which has been incredibly popular with small businesses. We launched QR code late last year. And when we closed the year, we had over 600,000 small businesses who had signed up to accept payments with QR codes. And so it's a, easy solution where they, are able to print out a static QR code. And maybe some of you have seen this at farmers markets or at food trucks. You simply print that out, stick it on your food truck or at your stall, and a consumer pulls out their phone, their PayPal or Venmo app comes up, and you're able to pay with that. And then we've got solutions for large enterprises like CVS, which went live. We've done some really great content to promote that, including a fun how-to video with Neil Patrick Harris, which was a story in and of itself as far as how we pulled that off in the midst of COVID. But, in that environment, it's very similar to other app purchases that are pervasive at merchants like Starbucks, where you simply pull up your app and you scan your own QR code. So again, I think consumers are getting more and more familiar with paying with their phones through different methods, and QR codes are definitely, driving a way for consumers to access those funds wherever they want to shop. And we have over 10 million consumers who have shopped in the physical world using a QR code with PayPal.
Wow. I can't believe that number, 600,000 merchants in the first year. That's incredible. And congratulations on the rollout with CVS. It's got to be exciting. And I'm sure there's many other major merchants coming really soon. So
Yeah, watch this space. You'll be able to shop at Nike and Bloomingdale's, Levi's, Macy's. So we've signed a lot of big merchants, which is really exciting. And it, it shows it's doing a job for consumers and for merchants as they connect buyers and sellers.
wow, great, great. Now you mentioned Venmo, right? So
Yeah.
Venmo, I mean, it's a different type of use case, and for a lot of people don't know that PayPal owns Venmo. How does Venmo play into this whole strategy?
Well, Venmo is such a great experience, right? It's everyone's go-to app to pay friends and family. And the cool thing about Venmo, and I think one of the reasons why it became so pervasive and relevant, was that it really kind of took away that stigma and taboo of how do you ask someone to pay you back? And it made it fun and social and easy. And so it's a way to pay friends and family back, but it's also a social platform. One of the things I love to do is, to sort of see, who are my friends paying, like what's happening. And as we have gone through this experience of COVID, it has been really interesting to look at how our Venmo community has leaned into the platform to help out friends, to help out essential workers, to support people who needed money. So we started to see all these really great acts of human kindness and generosity play out on the Venmo platform, and that has allowed us to reignite some of the passion from our community through an activation that we launched in COVID called Venmo It Forward. We just saw all this kind of natural generosity and people wanting to help each other out, and so we activated this idea of Venmo It Forward. And when we saw these acts of kindnesses, we would send $20 out to a user and ask them to send it back out again with great momentum and results. And Ellen ended up activating it on her show and getting behind it. And so it was really fun to see how a community-based social platform was driving that level of kindness, generosity, and human ingenuity. And, it was fun. We were looking at the notes, right? I mean, hopefully everyone out there uses Venmo, and you see that a lot of the activity plays out through emojis. And, we saw big shifts in things like, less pizza and less beer, more masks, more firefighters, more, nurse emojis. And so it was, the shifts were playing out in front of us real time, which helped us architect Venmo It Forward and lean into how consumers were using the platform at that moment.
Well, you'd be happy to know that the Harlan household, we're big Venmo users. So just a shout out, it's a great platform, and we use it for so many reasons, babysitters, paying for lessons, whatever have you. So it's a great platform.
I love that. And I think, Ken, that, paying for lots of things is what's a big area of focus. So Venmo is expanding into the world of payments as well. So bringing on merchants. So you'll be able to start to not only pay friends and family, but use Venmo at checkout, use Venmo at, food trucks and some of the other use cases that I mentioned earlier. So bridging that gap between paying friends and family and paying the merchants that you shop most at.
Can't wait to see that. That's great. And good luck with that. So, so marketing, right? So you have a lot. So you just mentioned how PayPal and Venmo with merchants and consumers. So there's almost, two major groups that you're trying to market to, right? You have merchants, you're trying to enter into and have the solutions that you just mentioned across many merchants. And then obviously for consumers to utilize across those merchants. So let's tackle one of those at a time. Which one do you want to tackle first? Marketing to merchants or marketing to consumers?
Let's start with consumers.
All right.
Where my passion lies.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So this is obviously, you have, like you mentioned, you have both PayPal and Venmo. What's the strategy to get this messaging across to consumers, right? And so let's start there at a really high level.
Yeah, absolutely. We closed last year with 377 million customers around the world using PayPal and 70 million Venmo customers. And so with that, we have the ability to leverage our own platforms to drive a lot of our education and awareness content. And our app continues to become more and more useful and fun to play with on the PayPal as well as the Venmo side. And so as we've built these new solutions, it has been a lot of fun educational content. We've leaned into a lot of how-tos. As COVID hit, as I shared, we saw this incredible shift. And we also saw lots of new consumers trying PayPal for the first time. And we saw, one of the great things about being a consumer marketer is, what are the real jobs that our brands do for humans? And so we started to see an older segment of consumers who were starting to adopt digital payments. And as we looked into some of the payment notes, we saw that one of the things that they were using it for was to stay connected to friends and family who may be far away, grandkids who they couldn't see. And so you started to see that play out in a lot of our content. We launched a campaign at the onset of COVID around the essentials that we all need, our everyday essentials. And we started to celebrate the little wins that were playing out, because despite all the challenges, it really was like this moment of ingenuity and optimism. And so we saw grandparents who were sending money to their grandkids to buy baking goods so that they could spend time with their kids through their grandkids through a Zoom to bake a cake or something like that. So we started to look at all these really fun, positive, ambitious ways that people were using the platform and to create little stories and, look at that as, yes, you can't see each other in the physical world, but you can bake a cake together across FaceTime or Zoom. And we were celebrating those little wins and those little moments. So there was a really great moment of saying, let's use this data to create stories and content that connects with our audience in the ways that they're using our platforms today.
Those are great opportunities. There's great examples of opportunities that you're obviously leveraging across many different formats, right? What kind of challenges are you seeing with, or obstacles with, reaching consumers with that kind of messaging?
Well, I think as marketers broadly, as we were listening to the last conversation, consumers have limited capacity, right? So we're actually, as marketers, kind of vying, in this attention economy. And so, capturing consumer attention and the need to touch them frequently with relevant messages is a big challenge. And so, that has really forced us to look beyond our own platforms to find ways in. So I mentioned the incredible partnership that we had with Neil Patrick Harris as we launched our CVS campaign. How do we work with influencers who are reaching the audience that is relevant to us, where we want our solutions to resonate and create fun content that is both educational and shareable. We've done a lot of work on our own social channels to, again, tell the story of the platform and its role as an enabler. So it's about content. It's about, working with publishers in new ways and, continuing to, as, we've talked a lot about in the last few sessions, like test and learn, right? Just see what works, see what resonates with the audience. And we're working in very agile fashions to learn and pivot as we go.
There's, I don't know if it was Harvard, but I saw a study not too long ago where the attention span of a human versus a goldfish. What do you think has more of an attention span? That's the point. That is the challenge for marketers, right? Whether it's a catchy ad leveraging a famous person, or an interactive ad unit, or something using sight, sound, and motion, right? There's a lot of different ways, but that's a major challenge. So now flipping over to, so consumers totally get it, the opportunities, the challenges, right? and you sound like the product itself, if you find a creative ways to reach people, it's going to be really successful, right? How about with merchants, right? Merchants are totally different, right? They're, large retailers to small retailers. What do you see as let's talk about first the opportunities and then maybe the challenges from a marketing standpoint, reaching merchants?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Ken. I mean, the need state of a small business versus a large enterprise are quite different. And even within the small business sector, a true, sort of brick and mortar small business versus the likes of the use cases I keep talking about, those who sell at farmers markets or in a food truck are very different. So, understanding again where to find those merchants. We do a lot in the way of, lead gen tactics that are, really targeted, that focus on those, very use cases. As we've launched our seller profile product, we have a small business profile on Venmo. It really has been a strategy of understanding who are the merchants who are most in need of accepting payments on Venmo and starting to actually feature them in our marketing and in our in-app promotions, so that we have a way to, again, sort of bring that human relationship between people who are buying from that merchant and how they are connecting with them into the stories that we tell. And so, as we tell the stories of one hairdresser, it connects with another hairdresser out in the network and starts to drive that kind of virality and connection. So, again, I think it's all based in, what we do as marketers. What's the problem that we're trying to solve? What's the insight? How do we create content that's engaging and shareable and will, accelerate the utility that we can bring to, both the seller and to the consumer, and then in the large enterprise space, as we bring on the likes of CVS, it's how do we show up as a partner? What are we going to do in the way of driving not only awareness and foot traffic, but education and in-store promotions and really investing in driving conversion. So lots of legs on that stool for sure.
Makes sense. So I'm moving over to Q&A. And so one of the first questions here was, do you see, I'll make it shorter. Do you see, do you approach your marketing strategy differently when it comes to PayPal and Venmo, or is it similar?
They're two really distinct brands. And, again, on the consumer side and on the merchant side, it really starts with, who is the target that we are trying to connect with? What is the human insight? What is the job to be done? So, we definitely are organized around the same marketing foundations, but Venmo is inherently a social app. So what we can do to drive engagement through the product itself is different than what we can do on the PayPal side of the house. We're looking at how we can work with publishers and influencers. Who those influencers are different, depending on the brand and what we're trying to achieve. But we're organized around a really strong full funnel playbook that starts with what does the brand stand for, whether it's PayPal or Venmo. How do we continue to drive awareness and consideration and preference through content, and how do we ensure that we're connecting with consumers and doing the jobs that they need us to be done through the product experience, and how we seek to delight them through what we offer.
Makes sense. All right. Another question. So this one is, first of all, they're thanking you for your stellar work at National Geographic and your focus on purpose there and utilizing that within your content and strategy. Do you have plans, or are you already currently utilizing purpose when it comes to any of your strategies or potential future strategies here?
Yeah, absolutely. PayPal is one of the most purpose-led companies that I've worked for. As I shared, our structure was secondary to our mission of the democratization of financial services, and we lean into that quite regularly. One of the things that I was really proud of that PayPal did last year was, as the Black Lives Matter conversation was playing out, and there was a real call for how we addressed racial injustice in the world, PayPal quite quickly established a $550 million fund to support Black and minority-owned businesses. And it's really been one of the reasons that I, as a human, chose to work at PayPal was because of its purpose. I had been following Dan Schulman, the CEO, for quite some time, and saw the things that PayPal decided to do that he would talk about, whether it was the work that we did in the last government shutdown and providing interest-free loans to furloughed workers, taking a stand in North Carolina regarding the situation with gender rights in stadiums and things like that. We always get behind our stakeholders and do the right thing, and it's very core to how we show up in the world. And I think it is something that we have to think about as far as how does that weave its way into our marketing. We do share great stories of how we connect buyers and sellers, how we invest in small businesses, how we invest in communities. And I think, as we double down on things like bringing PayPal in and Venmo into the world of physical commerce, and sort of helping Main Street come back open by enabling QR codes and connecting buyers and sellers in that way, I think you'll start to see the investments that we're making, not only in technology, but in some of those businesses as a part of our narrative.
Great. Another question here is, well, you already mentioned one of your favorite pieces of content with Neil Patrick Harris. Do you have a second favorite piece of content that you created for PayPal, Venmo, or both?
We did a really lovely holiday spot, and that was great on so many levels. It was, again, sort of putting PayPal in the background and telling our role as simply an enabler of what matters to people. It's a lovely human story of a father who sees his daughter practicing for the Nutcracker across Zoom, and his heart kind of breaking that she won't be able to do that performance live this year. So he turns their backyard into a set for the Nutcracker and dresses himself up like the Nutcracker. So if you haven't seen it, I think you simply can Google PayPal and Nutcracker. So the content was great. It received lots of attention and awards. But the thing that I really loved about that was that we worked with Tongle, which is an open source platform that works with creators and producers around the world. And that was a great sort of intersection of PayPal's purpose and our interest in, getting contractors and independent consultants back to work in COVID through how we created that story. So it was kind of like our purpose coming to life through how we built creative that also resonated with consumers.
Great, that's great. Well, last question, and then there'll be a quick question after that. But the last major question here was that I'll pick is because we actually talked about this, was the notes in Venmo. Do you leverage that or plan to leverage that data and content for marketing?
Yeah, well, just this weekend during the Super Bowl, we had a fun little poll of getting people to kind of choose which they thought would be the most used food emoji. So we do a lot to, leverage that to take surveys and drive engagement, which reminds me, it was a choice between pizza, hamburger, sushi, which was prevalent on there. And I need to find out what was the most used emoji. I'll tweet that out earlier. If you're following Venmo on social, you'll see it. So yeah, we activate through the use of emojis and really fun stickers that we use as well.
And the last real quick question here is, what's your last Venmo purchase?
I just sent my daughter some money so that she could treat her friends to dinner. It's interesting. College students are, in this crazy time. I've got a college age daughter of trying to find some ways to stay connected, and they're doing a lot of cooking together. So there's lots of Venmo notes going back and forth, and lots of food boxes, I think, that parents are sending to their kids so they can, or money that's being sent to their kids so they can buy food kits and things like that, so they can stay social and stay connected at school.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right, I can't believe it.
I know. Time flies, but this was great. And Joe, that's definitely a far cry from my college days where it was, cup noodles and mac and cheese and stuff like that. So, I mean, look, the pandemic has taught us all to cook a little bit, I think. So I love that. Ken, amazing job. Jill, it's always really so great to have you on our stage. And thank you both for this great discussion.
Thanks for having me. It was really great. Ken, nice to meet you. Hope everyone has a great week.
You too.
You too. We'll have you back again, guys.
Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Great. So we're going to keep things rolling. We have another amazing Brand Innovators longtime community member coming up in just a second. We have David Rubin, the Chief Marketing Officer of the New York Times. David's on our advisory board. He's been with us since his time at Pinterest, and before that at Unilever on the Axe brand. Harry Kargman, another Brand Innovators longtime friend and supporter from Cargo. Welcome, David. Welcome, Harry. How you guys doing?
We're doing great. I'm doing great, and I'm talking for David since he's on mute.
Oh,
he's still on mute.
well, you're on mute, David.
This is like an
Still
ad.
on mute?
I know.
No, you're good. You're good.
I keep I've got it between the background that I don't know where it came from and the mute button. I'm really starting with a lot of power here.
I love the background.
It reminds me of my grandmother's wallpaper in her bathroom a little bit. That's a classic. And I think I'll leave it to you guys in a second. But I think "you're on mute" is probably the most used expression, right? Like since the beginning of the pandemic, it's like "you're on mute," right? We've all said it. We say it multiple times a day, so it's all good. Harry, David, the stage is yours. I'll kick it off to you guys.
Thanks, David.
Thanks so much, David. David, we had a super interesting prep call yesterday, which of course I always enjoy talking to you because
You as well.
you have such a wide variety of experiences. And in fact, I would say that your experiences almost feel completely, it seems like a pretty curvy path to go from one thing to the other. But I thought, for the entire audience that's participating, I thought it would be a great opportunity to start out, even before we get into the New York Times and all the transformation work that you're doing, as well as how the New York Times is actually doing and breaking away from publishing, which I think are all super important topics to talk about because you are the exception in an ocean of publishing pain, I think on some level. But before we even get into that, because I know that much of the audience is focused on their own career and the trajectory of their own careers, given how interesting your trajectory and the journey is compared to, I think, many in terms of sort of just stepping up the corporate ladder. One of the questions that I sort of put together going into the session is, walk me through your career journey from body spray, because you were doing body spray and known for body spray. You were Mr. Body Spray, men's body spray, to sort of being the CMO of a broadsheet on some level. You sort of talked about how the two things are actually more similar than we would like to think. So I'd love to hear a little bit from you in terms of like, what is that career trajectory? How did you end up at the New York Times, and how did you get here?
Yeah. So you're saying the first time you saw an Axe ad, you didn't say whoever made that's probably going to be the CMO of the New York Times one day?
Well, of course. I mean, knowing you, I was like, he could do anything, but yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, probably the way to talk about this is, let me start by saying, I don't necessarily think the New York Times and Unilever or New York Times and Axe Body Spray have much in common. What I do think is that my role within them is there's a through line. And so, and I will say that through line is not one that I would have predicted. I I can be transparent and my boss knows this. I didn't see myself being the CMO of a news business. Certainly until I became one. So the way I got there is, what I was doing Unilever, I've always had an interest in digital marketing. I started my Unilever career back in the late 90s. And when I got put on Axe, I really got a passion for using culture and emotional connection to reframe a business and reframe a category and unlock a lot of growth by making people care about it here while also caring about it here. That's really what we did on Axe is we changed a category that was 100% functional. There was literally one brand claiming 36 hours of protection because the brand before it was 30 or whatever. So I think that's deodorant for people who don't shower for 2 days. I'm sure somebody was working on 40 and 44 and 46, right? And we came in and talked about something different, which is how it makes others, how it smells good and how it makes you feel and how it makes others feel about you. And now every brand in the category, no matter who they're targeting, use that emotional connection. I then went to hair care, which is a category where the emotional connection is higher, but all the brands say the same thing. And by really focusing on how our brands were different and really deepening that emotional connection in ways that were unique, we were able to unlock growth that Unilever's hair care business had not seen, and took over share leadership in the US, which had been multiple decades. I then went to Pinterest. The job there was trying to, it was really a resonant brand and an emotional brand, but the audience was not as wide as they wanted it to be. And so we really worked on how we make it appeal to more people. And a lot of that was trying to, make it clear that Pinterest wasn't a social media brand. It was a visual search engine. And what does that mean emotionally and functionally? And Pinterest has been growing rapidly. And then the New York Times, again, a very important category to people, but often a sea of sameness. And what I think marketing's role, and obviously the journalism is the most important thing and the digital product experience is right behind it. But the marketing's role is helping to sort of frame up, why is this thing different and why should you pay for it when there are free sources of news out there? And so the reason I joined was, I like to say what I like to do is turn the mundane into the magical, and really use marketing to unlock growth. And it felt like there was a real opportunity here to explain as the Times was leaning into being a digital consumer subscription business, to do the same thing, and for marketing to play a small role in that process.
One of the things that you shared with me, which, staying on the same theme of turning the mundane into the magical, you talked about examples of what you did to each of those brands, taglines and your approach that really were sort of the transformative elements. Maybe take us through a few of those. I mean, the example that I always use is, the truth is hard. That is an emotional thing. Can you walk me through sort of like, to your point about going back to body spray, it was always functional. Now it's, we can protect you for 35 hours versus 30 hours. What did you do there in each of the following sort of roles? Was there a tagline or an example of that transformation of the mundane into the magical that helped sort of reset the appearance or the perception of the brand?
Yeah, I mean, in Axe's case, I can't take credit for what I'm about to tell you because the brand was launched in France in 1983. What I was a part of was bringing it to the US, but the Axe effect is definitely that. In a category where most brands are talking about their length of protection and their strength of protection, the Axe effect is both a functional and an emotional claim. It's functional in that it's going to smell good, is the implication when you see the ads, and the emotional is what happens when you smell good. in Pinterest case, I think I already talked about it a little bit. It was really just continuing to emphasize that Pinterest didn't see itself as a social network, and isn't a social network. And the challenge with a social network, they have a role, they're great, but social networks are about sharing your own stuff as opposed to kind of finding what you're interested in. They're much less problem solution, and Pinterest is much more of those things. And so the visual search engine kind of analogy was a lot, it took a long time for Pinterest to succeed in getting people to see that and to embrace that. But when they do, their usage of the product is better, their satisfaction with the brand is better. And so Pinterest stayed at it and had a lot of patience and perseverance. And you can see now with how the brand's doing and how the business is doing that paid off. There were some, there's some days where it didn't look like they would be successful. And I think it's getting anybody to change their mind and talk about it differently. And so I think it's a good lesson for everyone that, the metrics can look poor before they don't. I mean, the business wasn't doing badly, but the evidentiary, data that anyone was going to embrace it. And then it happened. I think people much less call it a social network today. And then New York Times, we haven't changed anything about what the brand or the product is. What we have done is added a marketing component to it. And the truth is tagline, which we've used, the truth is hard, the truth has a voice, life needs truth, the truth is worth it. What we see that as is the truth is really a shorthand in our minds for the journalistic process. Just to step back for a second, the challenge at the Times is that we're trying to get you to pay for the news and to buy a subscription when there's a lot of free sources. And so you have to believe in that environment. You got to really believe our product is different, right? Because we're not just competing with somebody else, we're competing with free. And so you've got to really believe that that's worth something. And I think what the Truth Is series of ads do is they're really just how the sausage gets made ads. They're talking about the process that our journalists go through, the huge amounts of length that they go through, the amount of resources that it takes, sometimes the physical and or emotional harm that they're facing when they do their work, the obstacles that are placed to them. And so when people understand and believe that, what they then believe that something different's happening here that gives them as a reader a greater level of understanding, and it's worth paying for. And they also appreciate that it's quite expensive and fragile, and that if they don't pay for it, you get what you pay for.
Makes a ton of sense. How have you been able to, what's your process for figuring out that hook for each of those different opportunities? Like, obviously coming to it, the change of the axe effect. If the axe effect is not only about smelling good, but it's providing a different level of confidence to the wearer, right? Like there's a perception change. Like whether you smell good or not, whether actually Axe body spray is, really does the trick or not, the person that wears it at least feels that they have a shield of armor, that they can then sort of walk with swagger into the room. I mean, that's really the idea behind it. And you see it in all the commercials. And, on some level, the New York Times is co-opting the concept of it is the arbiter of truth. Like truth is defined by the New York Times, and I know that is a little bit of I think the New York Times would claim that truth can be owned by anybody, but the reality is the branding of owning the truth. I think the New York Times has done an extraordinary job sort of co-opting that as sort of a brand value that represents that of the New York Times. How did you get to that it should be truth associated with the New York Times? Or, the axe effect as the thing that impacts the human being so that they have the confidence. How did you even come up with what should those concepts be in your process?
Let me say one thing, we definitely don't believe that we're the only place you can get the truth or the facts. we do believe that you can get the truth and the facts from us. So the point being that the distinction being that we're not trying to tell you we're the only source that does this, or even the only source you need to read. What we are telling you is that we think you're on a journey for the truth, and that engaging with our journalism is one way to help you in that journey. And so, it's a little different than, well, maybe it is similar to like a consumer product where Axe wasn't suggesting that you only spray on body spray and never take a shower and never use soap and like those kinds of things. In fact, Axe offers a lot of those products. So, going back to, your question about the process, I mean, this is going to be a bit of a academic answer, but it just comes down to understanding your audience, understanding the end consumer. But it's about really doing so deeply and about really understanding the problem that they're solving, the sort of the need state, and which a need state is both point in time, but also where it fits in their life, right? And in so doing, being able to frame up the problem in a way that's not about you, it's about them. Particularly if you believe, my thesis that a lot of brands can benefit from really plugging into culture and plugging into an emotional connection. It's got to be about more than just what you're offering. It's got to be about where you fit in them and their society. And certainly you can see at the Times, we're a mission-driven organization. We're about helping you understand the world. We believe that a independent press is essential to a democracy. And so we're trying to bring, and we also believe that facts and a shared fact base is important to a functioning democratic society. And so while we don't go out and say that necessarily in like a very linear way, that's all the backdrop to our campaign. And we believe that those things are non-political positions.
So I think you brought up, and I actually wrote this down, so it's a beautiful transition. But tell me a little bit about the Times' mission and vision today. Broadly speaking, and I know that you'll take issue with this, your reputation is you're the anti-Trump. On some level, people, yes, they depend on like MSNBC or even CNN, but I think people feel that you have a seriousness about, I guess, the truth. And if Trump has some level of connection to fabrication, which I think is how the press looked at him. The New York Times was, the anti-Trump on some level. And while I know that from a fact perspective, you're trying to tell, the truth, from an editorial perspective, there is this left-siding, leaning toward the left side of the spectrum on some level. So I know you sort of take issue with this characterization, but I'd love you to sort of talk about where you fall and how you sort of talk about it in general.
Oh, you already said that. You already spoiled the plot. I can't go.
Sorry.
You're wrong, Harry.
I should have set it up in a slightly different way, so we could create a little more confrontation.
Yeah, you all missed it yesterday. I threw things at him and I told him he was totally off base. Look, our mission is to seek the truth and help people understand the world. A couple of things to know about that. One is that while politics and what you might think of as hard news are certainly very critical, they're not exclusive to what we offer. We think that people who are interested in the New York Times are interested in lots of topics, culture, and we have a very successful paid recipes product, New York Times Cooking. We have a games business with our crosswords and Spelling Bee and other products. We have lots of lifestyle and service products. We have Wirecutter. So first of all, it's not even all hard news. And the mission applies across all of them. The seek the truth part is the part that I think you're really hitting on there. And for us, it's about an independent hold truth to power. It's about surfacing facts. It's about covering, in the case of a political, administration, it's about covering whoever's in office. Now, it does happen that the last 4 years, Donald Trump was in office, and so we covered him as the president of the United States. And we are now covering Joe Biden, and that's not a it's not a comparison. It's not a both sides thing. It's that our job is to cover whoever's in power, in not just nationally, by the way. And that's what journalism does. Is it shines a light. It's and then readers can decide based on those facts, what matter and what don't. A good example is all the coverage we did a couple of years ago, Pulitzer Prize winning work around, Harvey Weinstein and sexual harassment in Hollywood that eventually led to the Me Too movement. The New York Times didn't seek to start the Me Too movement. The New York Times sought to tell a story about first Bill O'Reilly and then Harvey Weinstein and allegations that were being made to them, and to see if we could corroborate those facts and print them up against the standards of journalism. We did so in a way that a number of people found that, something they wanted to take action upon and start asking questions about whether, what society we want to be and how do we want to process those kinds of things going forward, and whether we've been doing that well in the past. But that wasn't what the journalism was about, right? The journalism was just about following the facts and getting them to a standard where they were printable. And so I think that's our mission. Our mission is to do that, and particularly in core news, our mission is to do that without fear or favor, without agenda and without fear of reprisal, whatever may happen to the paper or to the journalist.
One of the things that you brought up is that you're loyal to objectivity and independent journalism over all else. Do you think that you're going to have the same level of accountability to the current administration that you did to the past administration? How does that, or do you think that, given that most of your writers, while they are objective journalists, probably live in a blue area versus a red area, is there a different, you think that there's a different level of receptivity, I guess, to some of the decisions that are being made today?
I mean, I should be careful about answering too many of these questions because I'm not over the journalism, right? There's still a very clear church and state line, if you will, at a place like ours. What I can say is that it is core to the brand of the Times that we be an independent news source, and that we cover. Dean Baquet, our executive editor, has made it very clear, for the last 4 years, that we cover all administrations with a similar process and starting from a similar place, wherever it may end up leading. And the reason is that the administration will change, as it now did. And we're going to need to cover this administration the same way. And by the same way, I just mean by looking at the facts and printing the facts that we can. So I think that's the answer to the question. It's worth saying that we publish a lot of articles, 200 to 250 a day. A lot of people read a very small subset of that and make determinations about what they think is going on. And I think it's more important to look at the entire subset of work, not necessarily what you might get in your feed, which is, Facebook's algorithm or Twitter's view of what you may see, which has a lot more to do with who you're surrounding yourself with than what the New York Times is actually publishing and writing and covering.
That's an interesting, objective perception about how people actually see it. They see it in doses, and those doses are delivered potentially by algorithms. Moving on, because you made the point about not even just talking about the editorial component to it. One of the things that I think makes the New York Times stand out, especially since it's in the journalistic enterprise, which we all know has faced terrible uncertainty. I don't know of a time that's been more challenging, I think, to journalism. And one of those things that you and I are sort of working together to think about, how do companies like Cargo figure out how to pay more to editorial and to publishing in general, given how important it is as a cornerstone, of our democracy. What I'd love to hear is, like, why do you think, and what are you doing that makes the New York Times stand out as really an exception to the rule, when so many other journalistic enterprises are so challenged? And what is it about how you approach it that could be learned or followed by other journalistic enterprises, where maybe they can sort of take some of your lessons learned?
I'll start by saying, one of the core tenets of our mission is that the more quality original reporting and journalism that exists in the world, the better. Important that's like original reporting, right? I don't know if there's a limit to how much society needs, but I know we're not at it. And that it operates at all different levels. As you were saying, what's happening at a local level, where there really isn't a prevailing model that's sustaining that type of journalism. It's a real problem. Societal news deserts are things that people are talking about. And we do believe that every level of society is better when there is an independent press fulfilling that mission. We think the key to that is having more reporters on the ground doing the work. And so if there is a secret sauce, the secret sauce that the commonality we see between the places that are doing well, or at least doing okay, is that they have more people doing original journalism than they used to have. We have the most number of reporters we've had in our history. There's several other national publications that I think are also doing quite well, that are also growing their journalistic ranks. That may seem relatively easy now that we're having good business results. 4, 5, 6 years ago, it was not an easy commitment. And particularly if you go back to 2008 and the financial collapse, and the New York Times, while it did pull back to some degree, it really resisted slashing its newsroom when others did. And I think places that did are regretting it. And I think that, there are other things that matter, investing in digital product development is huge for unlocked data. These things are all really important investments, but ultimately the thing that matters is how good journalism you can make and at what scale. And that's about how big your newsroom is.
One of the things that you said to me, which really resonated, is it's really unbelievable that your product is doing so well because it's competing against effectively free sources of news. But you had some ideas as to why that is. And so I think maybe sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, look, picture another category, where you've got a couple of brands and one brand, let's say hamburgers, one restaurant chain charges for their burgers and another restaurant chain doesn't. Then even picture if the first chain charged for didn't charge for the first 4 burgers, but charged for the remaining ones. And, and the brand that didn't charge had a New York Times logo on their wrapper, and that's how they made their money. Would anybody eat at the brand that's charging? I'm going to guess not, and the only way
have to be super tasty.
Right. And the only way that anybody would is if that burger that was charging was so much better, right? That it would be worth paying for the one that wasn't free. And that's exactly what I think is the same for us. Obviously we're not burgers, but, and I think what's harder is how you perceive journalistic difference is more challenging. It's more subtle than food, right? And it's less benchmarked, and so you have to somehow believe that what you're getting here is worth the fact that we want, you've got to log in, you got to download an app, you got to, you got to pay. There's a bunch of stuff that other places aren't asking of you. And so in order for you to do that work, you've just got to really believe that there's a quality of difference. And for us, that's about, I understand the world better, and if you, when you come to the Times, if you take away that was happening, it makes sense to you. And the fact that this is where marketing comes in, the fact that we're making sure that we do think there are some things we're doing differently that make that happen. The amount of work we put in, the amount of money we put into it, the people that we hire on the journalistic side, those things all make a difference to why you're getting that. And you said a little bit ago when I said a version of this, makes sense. That's right, it does. You just don't think about it all day, right? And so when I say to you, you get the quality of news you pay for, how much are you paying for your news? You go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. But it's not how you're thinking every day when you open up your feed and start surfing for stories, So the only other thing I'll say is, in case this sounds like a crazy idea that people pay for the news, the reality is for most of American society, not to mention the rest of the world, you did have to. 65 million households had a newspaper subscription at the high water mark. So that was almost every house. I don't quite know what year that was and how many houses there were, but if you assume there were 90 to 100 million households. It's not impossible if you exempt the last 20 years that people knew they had to pay for the news. And that didn't even include the people who went to the newsstand to pay for it. So I do think that it's not like it's out of our DNA. It's just that we bought into the idea with the advent of the internet that information could be completely free. And I think what we're now seeing is that even outside of news, you have to be careful with free information. Not all of it is I was gonna say, not all of it's worth what you're paying for it, but you're not paying for it. So you need to be careful.
So I'm going to open it up to questions. If there's anybody that wants to ask a question, please put it in the chat, and I can ask those questions. I'll ask one question before that to give people time to ask questions in the chat. So my question is, when you look at sort of the growth of the different areas of the New York Times business, what's the fastest growing area today, and why? Or most exciting? Maybe fastest growing and most exciting to you might be one and the same, or it might be two different answers.
Yeah, look, the core of our business is our core news subscription, right? It's our main bundle. It's getting the New York Times and our digital, it's digital, obviously. We have 7.5 million subscribers, the majority of whom are digital. And that's exciting, and that's the core of the business. It's worth saying that actually, there are new people getting print subscriptions still. The business does get smaller, but it's not dramatically so. And so it is interesting that you still see people signing up for print, particularly during the pandemic with more people at home. The sort of exciting growth areas of the business, certainly international growth is great, but I mentioned our cooking product and our games product, both of which are subscription. The idea of a paid recipe site, again, is very analogous to what we've just been talking about. You can get recipes on the internet for free, yet we have a fast growing paid cooking recipe site. And why do people pay for it when they get recipes for free? Because they think they're getting a better experience from us. That's worth it. You have to work really hard to earn that, but we put the work in. And our journalists, the journalists put tireless effort into the recipes, and then the product experience to surface that is worth the money, and so people are rewarding it.
So Colleen was just asking on open questions, what's happening with the roadmap for audio? Where are you going with that?
So audio is really exciting. Obviously the Daily, which is our podcast, and depending on the week, one of or sometimes the biggest podcast in the country. I think it shows you a roadmap for how the New York Times journalistic process and commitment can offer, a product that is not, that's not the printed or the digitally printed word. And so we're going to, continue to expand there. We have Autumn is a New York Times product now where you can have articles read aloud to you, basically. And so that was an acquisition.
Is that the name? Is that the name of like Siri and Alexa? Is Autumn the name of your?
Yeah, it was an acquisition. It was an acquisition.
Got it.
And so without sharing too much details, we're very bullish on audio, and the reason why is that it's a place where the New York Times process and journalism can come to life. And what's great about it is, just like our core journalism, that's everything from core news to opinion to to culture and lifestyle. And so anytime we're talking about a medium that allows for all of that kind of provision, it's a good medium for us.
So there's another question Elun is asking, which I thought is interesting. Does the New York Times think about using, machine learning and algorithms to determine what you see on the front page, like Facebook and Twitter? Obviously, they've been extraordinarily successful with big algo to sort of keep you engaged and deliver up something that will get you to click. How does the New York Times think about that in the world, that we live in, given all of the challenges that we see with that approach?
Yeah, I would say our editorial judgment, which is a human judgment, is critical to what the New York Times is offering. What I'll also say is a lot of what readers want from us is that we'll help you, we'll share things with you that challenge your thinking. And we're not afraid to do that. And that's core to our brand. We do it for the mission, but it's also our promise, right? We're going to share with you the facts, whether you want to hear them or you don't. Whether it's what you expected or it isn't what you expected. So you should expect that sort of human editorial judgment remains core to anything we offer. That being said, we're a digital product. We've got lots of data, and we will continue to experiment with ways to offer people what they're interested in. Easy examples for that is, you can imagine that if you're an international reader and you might care about you might want to hear about the US election or a fire in California, but you might not want it to be the only story you see, right? You might not want 10 articles about it. And so how do we offer those experiences that don't walk away from the core promise, which is that we're going to show you stuff and show you what we think is important at the moment, but do so in a way that also is respectful of what you might be interested in to some degree. So it's a yes and kind of answer.
Last question, because I think we're out of time in a minute. Lee, actually a joint friend of ours, Lee Nadler, is on, and he asks a really interesting question, which is, the tagline, the truth, is hard. That is so extraordinarily pertinent and present in a Trump-led administration and White House, because the question of truth is so on the tip of everybody's tongue, and is so critical to people's perception of what's really going on. As we move away from a time or an era where potentially you feel like you're getting the truth out of the administration, you're getting the truth in just a much more straightforward way, do you have to think about altering or evolving your messaging in time to continue to keep the New York Times, I guess, really valuable to people, because the messaging sort of defines that focus or our new focus in the future?
First of all, hey Lee, thanks for the question. Can't actually see you, but I'm sort of going to reject the premise though. Like, I don't. First of all, what really the Times is about. Like I said back when I was disagreeing with you, Harry, we never intended ourselves or the truth to be oppositional to anyone. It's about having an understanding, and it's about making sense of a complicated world that's changing all the time and is hard to fathom. That's not really changing. There are lots of problems in the world, and how we as a country and also how we as a Earth solve them have not gotten any less, right? And so we will continue to seek the truth and help you understand what's going on, no matter who is the administration in power in one country, even the most powerful country on earth. And then secondly is, it's our job to hold truth to power. There's never been an administration that is sharing all aspects of everything they're doing, and the journalist's job is to be a shine the light mechanism on that. That's no less true now than it has been true in other administrations. And so I think, as long as there's uncertainty, people are going to be looking to the news, and all you need to do to believe that is look at what we just had our earnings results. Our traffic continues to be strong because people aren't sure what's coming up next. We hear from readers. Now I'm excited to see what President Biden will do, but I don't really know. And so I think that there's still plenty of things to uncover and to lead and to see.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. I think
Thank you, Harry.
everybody listening is probably blown away by your Axe effect and appreciates your virtual sense as it's coming through.
I don't know how you did that, but David, stop us before he keeps going. Thanks, Harry. I appreciate
But
it.
really appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
thanks everybody for joining.
This was great. David, always pleasure to have you here. Harry, similarly. So thank you both for your time. We really appreciate it. So, and we'll have you back again soon. Like I say, there's always time for part 2, part 3. So we'll get you guys back to keep this great conversation going. But thank you guys. And we're going to keep our program rolling. We have 2 more amazing sessions today. So our next one, I'd like to bring up George Hammer, the Chief Content Officer at IBM. They do have a new CMO. George oversees content over there at IBM. So welcome, George. And I believe we have Heather from Media Monks that's going to be coming in just a second to lead this discussion. How are you doing, George?
Doing awesome, David. What's in the bottle?
This is Topo Chico.
All right.
We've started planning for our big tentpole in March. Usually we are in Austin during South by Southwest, and that's where I get my annual fill of Topo Chico. But we're not going to be there this year, so I've been every time I order Chipotle, like I have them send over a Topo Chico. So I'm slowly getting ready, but I dove into my stash today. But nothing alcoholic, nothing too crazy. Just your Topo Chico. Heather, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome. It's great to have you guys here. I know we're a couple minutes behind, so I won't talk anymore. The stage is yours. I'll be back in a little bit.
Fantastic. Well, hi, everybody. I'll just kick this off, and then I would love for George to introduce himself. I'm Heather. I'm VP of Client Engagement for Media Monks. We're part of Sir Martin Sorrell's S4 Capital. For those who aren't familiar with us, we are a creative and digital production company excelling at premium digital experience. And it has been my pleasure for, I think, the past 4 years now, George, to have been partners together on a number of different initiatives with you guys. So I would love for you to introduce yourself, and then we'll dive in.
Awesome. Well, I thanks all for having me. Heather, good to see you again. I lead a team at IBM, Creative and Content. It didn't exist before I joined 4 years ago. And we are very much set up almost like Johnson & Johnson or any other holding company, where we have tons of business units. And in order to drive adoption of people wanting to actually do great content and storytelling and evolve from a product-centric company to an audience-centric company, we kind of decentralized our creative team at first and pushed them into the business units. And that really was kind of kicked off what we were doing overall in marketing, which was implementing the principles of agile, which is like used in tech most, into the processes of creative and marketing. And a couple years later, I'm excited. Heather's been along for the ride actually through some of that work. But I think we're doing well at trying to make some great stuff in an agile environment.
Well, actually, that's a really good transition, your intro to some of the things I want to talk about. I think I hear a lot from some of the brands, not only IBM, but others that I work with, in terms of when you want to win in a digital economy and you do have that top high level brand, but you do have subcategories or business units, et cetera. How do you establish consistency across the board? And implement that through digital? There's so many different channels. What's kind of, I guess, your POV and approach within IBM and beyond?
Well, first is enabling people to have time to do great work, and especially in this world of being at home, you have to radically simplify stuff out of people's calendar and enable them actually creatives to create. And so I think the first thing is empowering people to work differently in this digital world, but we'll come back to that. The next thing is when you have people making stuff in their homes all around the world, how do we do it in a singular fashion? This is the moments when brands need to look internally and kind of assess who we are, and then simplify that down to one or two things, and then go all in on it. If you look at Wall Street, the stocks that are moving the most are the ones who really do one or two things really well. And so that's not maybe because that's all they do, but they stand for a thing. And so for us, right now, it's all about hybrid cloud and AI, and we're just simplifying down the messaging of what we are and who we stand for. But IBM overall has always stood for the intersection of business, technology, and society. And I think brands that have that purpose, and especially that society piece at the core, are doing well or better right now when society needs brands. They need, like the New York Times talked about, they need the truth. They need, people need something to believe in. And they need to trust that their partners are on their side and not just using their data for something else. So back to your question for consistency, besides standing for a thing and have a singular purpose, there's a few things we did tactically. One is we brought repeatable formats to IBM. Think of these as like serialized content containers.
Yep.
They have the same kind of like shell, beginning, middle, end, fragments around it, but it empowers the creator to not think every time I need to make something, reinvent the wheel. What's the container? They just focus then on the story and focus on the story. And those repeatable formats has scaled for us. One of the things we did was we created the mission to kill the white paper. And one of my learnings at first, which this mission failed, is because all we did was kill the white paper. And then the next iteration of it was, don't take something away from someone until you give them something to do. And so what we said kill the white paper and do smart papers instead. And so then we invented these repeatable formats, which are these interactive thought leadership white papers, and allow people to focus on writing great stories in those.
I think
one other thing real quick is that we're playing with now, and I'm really excited about, in a digital world where people are doing briefs and content everywhere. It's hard to scale the people who are the bearers of the standards. What we built about 6 months ago and we're using now is actually Watson AI in our creative process. So as you're filling out a brief, it's reviewing the various fields in the briefs and suggesting the right repeatable formats that might work. It's suggesting, oh, there's this other great piece of content that's similar to what looks like you have a brief for. Maybe you try reusing that instead, or suggesting stuff to you to try to help the creator make those decisions for consistency and standards, but also increase performance.
That's really interesting. I think I mentioned to you recently. I'm reading a book called The Human Edge about how automation is playing a large kind of portion, but how humans still bring kind of that curiosity and creativity element, and that the bridging of the two is what's going to lead to success within a digital economy. I just really like how y'all are taking your own technology and applying it to your own creative to enhance the performance. And that's really cool. I think that plays into a little bit of some of like, you know, taking a big idea and disseminating that across multiple different channels. Our CCO, Yuka, he talks about, you know, feeding the feeds, but that you have to, you know, be purposeful in those particular channels, because essentially, you know, the consumer is different at each of those points. I'm curious how this kind of process feeds into that, and how y'all are adjusting and taking some of that high level story and then disseminating out, or creating just like the variety of content that you ultimately need to do.
Yeah. Well, we had, when I started here, we had a problem of too much content. When I did my first content audit, it showed we made 10 million pieces that year, first year I joined, which I can't imagine, given the number of people we have, that those 10 million pieces were worth every audience's time. So we started the mantra, make less matter more, which was, let's make half as many things twice as good. And that's another thing, when you have people spread across 23 countries, you can have all the best strategies in the world, but unless they're communicated and felt and followed, it doesn't matter. And so we find ourselves not only just developing a strategy, but also spending a lot of effort in communicating and almost doing internal campaigns around those strategies. So we focused on shrinking it down. And then we focused on, okay, let's install some sort of asset caps per campaign. So we'd only make a certain number of things, because the data was showing us that, you know, 2 times per week on this social channel was the best ROI and most successful, and these other things. So we used data. But then we got to the point where we can't be just an accumulation of a bunch of touch points. A brand has to be it's a relationship with an audience. And so we shouldn't be just sitting around talking about what's the right number and how many to have. And especially when people don't have a lot of time, it goes back to, how do we still focus on those fewer things, but then how do we version them to get as much juice out of them? And so we have been working on implementing Adobe to help enable personalization of our web experiences. And we are moving to taking those few things and versioning them at scale for audiences, whether it's for ABM or top accounts, whether it's versioning it for a specific industry, a specific business partner. And this, what we're calling versioning as a service, this model of taking things and version them for many audiences so we can resonate one-to-one, I think is the next wave for us. It's not let's figure out how to feed the beast of all the channels. It's being respectful of people's time and versioning the stories to resonate more one-to-one versus figuring out how to just be there.
Interesting. I'm trying to think.
I took your breath away.
No, I know. I was just like, purposeful content, weird, interesting feed. I think you've talked a lot about, I was trying to figure out how to approach this, brainstorming and working across, you know, your global network within IBM, because obviously you want to be relevant in markets, not only like where you are. Pandemic, that's obviously presented a lot of challenges for a lot of people. I know y'all have been similar in our case, like we got rid of our office. So everybody's a bit all over. In addition to consumers having limited time, you know, our own at-home workers are having limited time. Have y'all had to kind of change the way that you're working, and has that impacted the output of that smarter work that you've seen, you know, not being there together to collaborate as much as possible?
Well, the world needs empathy, right? But the more we sit behind screens and sit at home and work, the further we're apart from physically from people, and the creative process thrives when it's interaction.
Yeah.
So we have to, the key here is to, I don't think you can have empathetic content unless you have empathetic interactions with your own team. And I mentioned that we were on our agile journey 4 years ago. We also did a thing called co-location, which IBMers were spread around the world. And we said, you guys need to all move to and be in these few centers that work next to each other. Now, the pandemic hit and none of us are necessarily next to each other anymore. But I actually think all of that was really training to prepare us for this moment. Because if we weren't together for that short period of time and actually built those connections and relationships with each other in person, I don't know if we would be as successful in this world we are now. But what it also taught us is that you don't have to be in the office for all the interactions, and actually being at home and stripping meetings away can make a difference. So the strange thing happened where marketing at IBM, we rate everyone's employee engagement score, which is basically how happy are the employees and how much would they recommend working there and all that type of stuff. And all the various functions rate against each other. Marketing was kind of like in the middle of the pack. This happened and we worked from home, and our employee happiness went to the top, the best. People were actually more content to make content from home. And if happiness is directly correlated with productivity and outcomes, it really makes you step back and say, maybe there's a model here. Maybe we're doing something right. And the danger though of being in this digital world and at home is I see there's a lot of pressure to collect a lot of data and follow the data in certain areas. And brands and teams need to remember that we stand for a brand, stand for a story and a message. And if you keep following the data, you may look back one day and realize that you're not the company you thought you were when you put all your creative up against a wall and look at it. So the digitalness of this world has pluses and minuses that you need to mitigate for. Give the people flexibility. They might be a little happier. We do need to get back to a world where we do some things creatively in a room together. It just will make things go better. But we can deliver well. And I think the interesting thing though is that as we're in this world where we're doing digital, and digital gives us more data, that we need to be data inspired, not data driven. And data driven companies might drive themselves right out of business.
Have you all seen, you talk about data input, is that coming from internal or audiences or both? Has that shifted in terms of, from working at home and how you're gathering that as well to impact things?
Oh, we have more data than we know what to do with.
Okay.
And the challenge is not actually having data in marketing. The challenge is having actually, I think, the skills of the people to interpret the data to deliver the insights. If you look at B2B, let's start there. But if you look at any category and then look at their competitors, most of their creative looks similar because they're all looking at the same audience insights, coming to the same conclusions and developing similar messaging, and probably all similar colors. And so I don't think the challenge, and going back to your book on the human edge, the challenge is going to be actually people who can think differently.
Yeah.
And bring creative problem solving to how we look at data, how we develop insights, how do we actually connect and build empathy in what we do. And I think that's the challenge of digital, is don't allow it to turn us into robots.
That kind of leads to my next point is we are so embedded in digital now, most of us being at home. And, part of like what I've activated with you guys on, I think my last actual international triple S was being at Davos with IBM. And we can't obviously do that anymore. I'm curious, have you seen your efforts in content expand to different experiences and how you're bringing those experiences in? I know I worked on, a whole virtual garage experience because it was supposed to be in person and couldn't. But what are you kind of seeing, internally and in other experiences that you're engaging with in terms of how content, what that means is changing across those touch points?
Yeah, there's a couple cool things happening. There's the people and the output. There are people's jobs who were to do things that events teams, for example, who were in a specific silo and they thought their job was to do events, who now do content.
Right.
And then other people who did other digital people who built web pages. But as those become more automated, they do content. So we're getting this world where we're building stuff. And like I said, we have to be more than the accumulation of our stuff. We have to be experiences. And then we also have to stand for something. We need to be brands that stand for humans, not just market at them. And so there's that aspect of the change of the people. And as that happens, we're going to live in this world of gray where no one really quite knows what's going on. But I think it's an opportunity actually to break down silos and work closer as teams. Because organizations, that's our biggest weakness, is silos. The second part of it is experiences themselves. We look at the hero experience with the derivatives, similar to I talked about the hero content and derivatives. I think the briefs need to evolve more from come up with a tagline and a message, and then figure out all the executions to start thinking about what is the digital experience first, because that is important. And then I also think this is a great moment for brands, because a lot of brand teams and marketers, they think of the logo, they think of the advertising, some content impressions, but a brand is experienced through your sellers, through your stores, through your products. And this is the moment we as marketers get to lean in and say, hey, that chatbot that people are engaging with on our site for customer service, that's a brand experience. How can we work together to make sure that copy is great, that experience is great, the videos we're serving up are great? And so I think this is a great moment for marketing overall to actually be champions for the brand like we should. And if the champions of the brand is a lot more than the stuff the marketers do today.
100%. Well, before we go to questions, I have one more point I want to touch on that's everybody's favorite, Gen Z. I think from our perspective, we see them, as really challenging brands and the culture as a whole to be more authentic. I'd love to just hear how you and IBM are looking at Gen Z and the future, I guess, clients of tomorrow and starting to approach them or reach them either through digital or other areas.
We've been fortunate in this area. So IBM is a company that changes what it sells every couple of years. Yep. The things that's consistent are our people and our beliefs. And our beliefs have always been about, we believe if this was Marvel Universe, we believe we're the good guys, right? And
no Thanos here.
So we believe in tech for good. And so this is the moment I think where you see a lot more brands that are focused on actions versus just advertising. Mm-hmm. And but that doesn't mean advertising can't be great. And so you'll see we had initiatives that built audiences focused around a thing. So Call for Code is an initiative that we built, that we brought all developers together in a kind of like a marathon experience to develop solutions for first responders. This was to fight the global crisis for climate change. But that same community, that same action, that same tool at our dispense, we've been able to repivot it to fight racial injustice, to finding cures for the pandemic. So we have this amazing machine called Summit that we made too. We've been figuring out how to unleash that to solve problems that are related to that humanity cares about. So I think like not businesses are not all not for profits. We still need to
No,
make
true.
money, right? So, but your brand doesn't have to be shy if you're doing something that's valuable. And so I think that is the key is adding value in being useful, and not just useful in saving the world, but same mantra you bring to your audience in every engagement is, was this time a good use of time with them?
Well, I think that goes back to kind of what you say is what is your brand experience? That ladders into that as well of like being purposeful across channels at every touch point, whether that's, in person or not, in digital, breaking down those silos so it transcends across everything you're doing. I think all of those things are inherently connected, which is really good. And then just seeing how you're kind of applying that as you continue. IBM's been around for a very long time, which is great. I don't think y'all are going anywhere. So just how you're continuing to evolve throughout time for future generations who respond differently is very interesting. Cool. Any other touch points, or I can kind of open it up for questions.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what people are curious about.
We're getting a lot. I'm seeing a lot. So Abby is asking, what kind of information do you look at as you're deciding what a big story is?
That's a great question, because there are so many, we have more stories than we can tell. So we have a story filter. Everyone should have a filter, and and the criteria in the filter should be related to what you care about, but ours, it's part of like what kind of journey are we trying to take this audience on, and what's the barrier to get them through that journey, and does the story is that story related to something that they care about? Also, kind of like, is it true and authentic to the brand, and do we have the right to play in it? And then where is it, do we have a creative angle? If you Googled what we developed, would it be everything better than page one of the results? So we kind of have like an ABC story filter that we use when we look at story opportunities. But the goal here isn't like what we use. The goal should be for you is like, come up with something and then refine it over time. Because otherwise you're just a bunch of people just greenlighting something either because you have the budget to, or because some executive said to do it.
Cool. Let's see. Second question from, I'm not going to try to mess up the name. I apologize to this very nice person, but can you tell us a little bit about sustainable strategies of IBM, both future and ongoing, and like how you're working towards overall sustainability goals? I think, Call for Code plays into some of this a little bit, but are there?
If you want to go dig into it, go to ibm.org, and we have all of our programs there. And it's a great place to go to review it. I'd say there's a few things though about sustainability and just though our why behind it. People don't come to work at IBM because it's the coolest place in the world. It will be the coolest place someday, but
it's cool.
People are there because they believe in what we do, and we stand for something greater. And so it's motivating for our employees, and it's good for the world. And so I think that is I think there's almost like no downside to following our sustainability strategy. And so I would just go to ibm.org, look at all our programs. If you want to dig into anything more about those, just email me and we'll go into them, because there's some cool stuff there. I personally love Call for Code because you can use, I think technology will solve some of the problems before governments can, because governments tend to be a little slower. And I love creative problem solving and developer and breaking the stereotype of what a developer is. From a person in a hoodie to a person who actually cares. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, we saw that in the documentary we made together. That was really cool, especially with all the efforts that Pedro's doing in Puerto Rico, and how that was impacted. Well, my last question is for me is you have the unique ability to be an in-house, creative push system and alignment within IBM, and you call yourselves Originals team, the IBM Originals team. How do you see like that originality kind of coming through within both your own ecosystem in terms of how you're structuring, and then how that's manifesting in the creative that you're putting out there, either as a representative of your team or the IBM brand itself?
Well, the why behind the name is probably more important first. So when I joined IBM and I went around different offices, I asked people what they were working on, and they would be bragging about, I made 50 webinars last quarter. And it was a quantity goal given by some executive, and some of that still exists today. But I wanted people to, and I changed the title from content manager to content director, because I wanted people to take ownership in the creative and actually lead it, not just manage it. We don't need people managing process. We need people with a point of view who own the story and direct it to be as good as possible for the audience. And we came up with the mantra, make less matter more, which was good too, to focus people on half as much stuff twice as good. But still, culturally, I wanted to say, like, this is the group within IBM that's going to be the most creative. It has to be. And it needs to be the most diverse, because we believe in diversity of thought equals diversity in creative, and also in other types of diversity. And then I wanted people to say that we needed to actually be different than everything else out there, because I'm tired of looking like the competitors. And original content stands for original people. Or no, IBM Original stands for the people, the original thinkers. It stands for the output, as in original content that's different than others. And it stands for something that we all seek out, which is the stuff you see in Netflix and others is like something you would almost, the higher order goal is one day we will make stuff so good that people will pay for it. And if we ever became like Lego in that sense, I think that would be great.
What do you see as kind of your biggest challenge ahead of you for the next quarter, next year?
I think there's a lot of change happening right now. We're trying to, and everyone is trying to change different things. So everyone's coming at teams for change. And the biggest thing holding us back is all of the change creates sometimes confusion and pulls teams into more meetings. And if teams spend 70% of their time in meetings, we become just a company full of generalists, of people sitting around talking. And we all know that generalists do general stuff, and specialists can do greatness in their particular craft. The key is when generalists work with specialists and they all come together around one common goal to make out awesome outcomes. So the enemy in my mind is time and meetings, trying to reduce those as much as possible, as driven by lack of clarity and lack of focus. We might cut down. This year we reduced the number of campaigns that give people focus, but then some business GM somewhere is not going to be hitting their goals, and they're going to come to marketing. And marketing needs to be a strategic function that says, here's how we're investing our money, here's why it's good for IBM overall, and not an order taker function that says, yes, GM, I will go do that, and not give any pushback or rationale. So the evolution and of marketing to that strategic function, and the empowerment and the trust in us and how we spend our money and how we do our activities will lead to better overall audience relationships and sales, is something that I think many of us are on that journey doing.
I love your series that you host on LinkedIn, your Content Cantina. I'm curious to see, can we expect any episodes? You know, I know we're in COVID, but are we going to figure out a way to kind of bring those kind of back? I love the unique perspectives we were getting. I think the last one I kind of was able to watch was the Tech for Good, but can we expect any more of those this year?
Why I did it was I think brands greatly underutilize LinkedIn as a content platform. We still do too, and I have no idea why that is. It's so powerful, especially in B2B, but in B2C, and like people will go there to find people they care about and content they care about and to connect. And every brand is trying to be into something that people care about and to connect with others. So part of my job is to inspire people that greatness can happen at a company that is 100+ years old and in a B2B sector that people think is boring. And so I really did it to prove to people that you can do something different in there. You can take a risk. And then my challenge to the team is beat me, do something better. I haven't set the standard for what greatness is. But I want to prove to people that greatness can happen. And so that's my goal, is a lot of being a leader at IBM, and I'm assuming many of your companies, is you don't control people. You just show them what greatness can look like. You hire great people and put them in the right place, and then you get out of their way and give them a goal to march towards. And so that's what I'm doing. I really try to basically, I work for my team, not really managing my team. And to work for them, sometimes I have to put something out there to be like, here's something, go beat it.
One thing I really like that you guys have leaned into even more this year, as you've been figuring out new ways of working, is your kind of showcase and your meetings where you kind of come together at a central point. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that? Because, you know, as a partner, I've seen a lot of success just as y'all have done that internally, but being a part of those, like myself sometimes. And I think that's a really good thing to kind of net out on, and just a smart ways of working when we're not necessarily together. And then also when we are together, because y'all were doing it even then.
Yeah, there's 3 key meetings, maybe even more, that we've adopted in the Agile methodology. The stand up, which is more regular, where we actually different teams stand around and actually talk about the blockers that are inhibiting them to achieving their goals and how to remove them and continue moving forward to hit their deadlines. There's the reflection, which is the work is done, what worked, what didn't, how can we optimize it, what should we kill, and how do we move on. There's the salon, which is more on a quarterly basis, which we look at everything on the wall that the audience experiences and tries to figure out how to make the journey better, how to make the experience better. And then there's the showcase, which is there's greatness happening. Let's showcase it and inspire people to do other greatness. And I really love the book, Steal Like an Artist. I always kind of reference it because great creative teams steal from each other. So, and we have people all over the world working on stuff. And so our size could either be a weakness or a strength. And if you use it as a way to crowdsource greatness and then demonstrate and share that greatness and then ask other people to steal that greatness, then in a sense it becomes a strength. And our showcase is a way in order to plant the flag on some great work happening around IBM for others to see about it, hear the teams doing behind the work, and then talk to them and steal it and learn from it. And that's really, if you could do those 4 meetings you pretty much nail the Agile methodology from a technical basis. But Agile is not just meetings, it's a mindset. And that's the hardest part, which is changing the culture to bring trust, respect, openness, and courage to the place. I remember it as ROTC, but it's respect, openness, trust, and courage, right? And I'd say any great company, you just look at those, and if you can figure out those, you don't even need to have any meetings. That is the key to successful marketing.
Awesome. Well, I think, have we reached our time?
Yeah.
I think just about. I always hate this part. Like, we have these great conversations and I don't want them to end, but we've got no shortage of events and live casts. So we'll, like I say, we'll have to bring you guys back for part 2 soon.
Yeah. I love it. You did a location change and maybe a wardrobe change too. I don't know, David.
Me?
Yeah.
I don't think, not today. Sometimes
Oh.
I've done, there was one live cast not too long ago where like I posted a screenshot and then of course my mother commented, she goes, your shirt looks like a bathrobe. So of course I had to
Oh my
run,
God.
you know, classic mom, right? So I had to go and change my shirt. But today, no, maybe I don't know. I changed the buttons. I don't know. Maybe
Oh my
some lighting,
God.
but I mean,
Well, I can't end it without telling everyone out there that Heather and the Monks team are awesome to work with too. So
Thanks,
if you're
George.
looking for good partners, I know you didn't sign up to sell anyone, but I figured, what the heck, I might as well put in a little
Hey,
tip there for you.
please sell our services by all means. No, it's been a joy working with you for the past several years. You know, I know we're going to do more great stuff together, and it's just nice having a little chit chat with you.
All right, peace out.
that's awesome, guys. Well,
Thank you, everyone.
thanks, George. Thanks, Heather. It was great having you guys here. I love that little shout out at the end, right? Got to show the love. But we're going to keep things rolling. We have one more amazing speaker in session today with Cheryl Atkins Green, the Chief Marketing Officer at Mary Kay. So I think Cheryl's going to be joining in just a moment. And we have her moderator coming up as well, Eric Sanders. So let's welcome Cheryl and Eric. Eric is the Vice President of Sales at Braze. And as I mentioned, Cheryl is the CMO at Mary Kay. So welcome, Cheryl, and welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Eric, it's great to have you here. Cheryl, it's great to have you here. I will turn the stage over to you guys. Introduce yourselves and lay the groundwork. And I'll be back in about 40 minutes to thank you guys.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Cheryl, great to see you. You've got the drop on me with the background, so I give you the advantage and the nod. Before we get started, if I may, I just want to spice things up for one quick second, if I can, and I'd love to share a little video that you provided with me and give everyone a little bit of chance to do a little in-house dance party.
There you go.
Is everybody seeing that?
No, maybe so. Like a rocket gonna blast off, watch me go. Yay, yay, say my name. Haters gonna hate, but I'm harder than the game, so ha. Hello, bye-bye. Everybody looking at me, but I don't mind. Cause damn, straight, righteous as what? Hungry like the wolf, gonna get me some. Come on now, let's work. Come on now. Come on now, let's work. Check it out. Come on now, let's work. Come on now, check it out. Come on now, let's work. Come on now. Come on now, let's work. Come on now, check it out. Come on now, let's work. Come on now, let's check it out.
Are we all pumped now?
All right.
I'm excited. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me again here today, and certainly to speak with the Brand Innovators team and audience here. You have the advantage of having of leading a marketing organization and an iconic brand, certainly an iconic American brand that most of us are familiar with one way or another through our lives. But I'd love it if we could even just start, and I think a lot of this even came through in the video. Could you just open up a little bit, and for those of us who may have known you through the pink Cadillacs or other, give us a little bit of sense of the history of the company and the brand, and a little bit on your mission, if you would.
Sure. Always happy to talk about our company and the amazing legacy of Mary Kay Ash. We truly are a company that was founded by a woman for women. And in 1963, after getting passed over too many times, Mary Kay Ash decided that there would be and could be a better way. She designed a company that would offer unlimited opportunities for women, all women, to earn extra money, to earn a career income if they chose, but importantly, to do that with the flexibility to really have it all in the sense of pursuing all of life's priorities. So with that, she started her business with 9 of her best friends. Fast forward today, Mary Kay supports the success of millions of entrepreneurs all around the world in nearly 40 countries. Mary Kay has a strong presence not only in North America, Latin America, Western and Eastern Europe, as well as Asia. And importantly, the company is still private and it's family owned, and we are able to stay very true to the original mission of enriching women's lives. We do that by offering an earning opportunity. cosmetics are what we sell, but it's really a business that's grounded in relationships. It's grounded in values. It's really about women empowering other women and supporting their success. So today, as you saw in the video, yes, we have a lot of exciting, amazing products, but the real excitement is really how we are empowering women today in many ways all over the world.
And can you spend a minute to, because you talked about empowering women and the ability to help them build their own future and guide their own destiny. Your business model is a really important one, especially as we start to get into digital. Can you talk for a moment, again, for those who aren't familiar, your distribution and sales channel?
Yes, our business model as a direct seller is basically about developing entrepreneurs. We formulate and manufacture almost all of our own products. We sell those products to Mary Kay business owners who then develop a customer base, and they have an opportunity to earn a retail profit on the products that they sell. And we are very true to that model. We only sell to our customers who are the independent sales force. They in turn develop a customer base, and we support their success. And speaking specifically to my role, support their success not only with innovative products, but also the social media, digital assets, digital business tools, all the marketing support, all of the scientific credentialing and information that they need to be a trusted resource to their customer base, and to provide their customers really with personalized, customized beauty solutions.
So you touched on a couple of things that we're going to circle back on, and certainly the digital assets, social media, digital business tools. Before we really dive in, because that's our theme today, winning the digital game. Can you describe for us your role and as you kind of think about your role as the CMO, where digital fits into your organization? As we'll start drilling down into that a little bit more as we go.
Yes, in my role as Chief Marketing Officer, I lead a very talented global team. I not only have a corporate team based in Dallas, where we are headquartered, but I also work with a team of marketers all around the world. So we do have the benefit of really having real-time global input on trends, understanding what women want, the things that are common around the world, and also the things that are different and unique. My team is responsible for concepting and the portfolio strategy of our products, and then working with our corporate partners in research and development and supply chain. As I mentioned before, we manufacture the majority of our products. We have a team of amazing scientists who are developing technologies. We have more than 1,700 patents behind our products. So quite a bit of my team's work is directed toward the product portfolio. But in addition, we want to make sure that each and every independent beauty consultant can be the best Mary Kay brand she can be. So that means that she's got the marketing assets, product education, marketing and digital tools to help introduce products to her customer base and again, grow her business, whatever size business she chooses.
Within your organization, do you have a separate group focused solely on digital, or another group on R&D? I'm just a little insight into the org chart, I think would be interesting.
Yeah, I do have part of my organization is devoted to product and brand development, again, working with their cross-functional partners. Another part of my organization is focused on developing marketing content and that strategy. And that group does include my digital analytics group, my social media team, et cetera. I also lead a very multi-disciplinary dimensional in-house ad agency. In fact, it was the in-house agency that produced the content that you opened up with. So again, product photography, packaging design, we have an in-house video studio, and we do produce the majority of the content for all of the Mary Kay markets all around the world.
Great, thank you. So I'd love to spend a little bit of time drilling into the digital aspect again, and with your business model, with your independent beauty consultants as kind of your main route to market. A lot of times when we might think of digital, it's direct to consumer and ways to not only stimulate demand but to drive e-commerce. I'd love to spend a minute or two just talking about where some of the big initiatives you have are, and which ones are focused on the consumer, which ones are focused on, as you said, tools to enable your channel. And maybe you can give us some ideas of some of the types of things that Mary Kay promotes and invests in from a digital perspective that could highlight where your dollars go and what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah, I know you can understand and appreciate. I can't share all that we're doing, but I can provide some examples of where and how our investments in digital technology are supporting the success of the independent sales force. As you mentioned before, we are not actually a D2C business. We are a B2B business. So first and foremost, a lot of our investment has been to make sure that we make it as easy and convenient for the independent sales force to conduct her business. So in terms of ordering the products, understanding the status of orders, in the United States, we are able to fulfill an order on her behalf. So there is a direct shipment option that she can utilize if it's more convenient for her customers. Sometimes the independent sales force chooses to deliver the products themselves. And actually in this recent environment, it's been very advantageous that they had a capability to not only deliver products locally, but to also leverage our ability, our logistics to help her fulfill orders for those customers that maybe didn't live in her local community. We also make sure that she has a suite of digital tools to support her business. So those might be videos, digital party assets so that she can conduct her business digitally, which she has been doing an amazing job of leveraging over this past year now. Making sure also that in terms of tools that her customer base can access. One of the things that's always been important about Mary Kay is that opportunity to try before you buy. Typically that happened in person, but more recently that's been happening with the help of digital apps such as Mirror Me, where customers can try on a makeup application, or the independent beauty consultant can send an idea. Her customer can try it on virtually and then have a chance to order it. We certainly make sure that we provide samples whenever we can that the sales force can also use. We have a skin analyzer that independent beauty consultant can use remotely with her customer to understand that customer's skincare needs. And skincare needs definitely change over time. And going back to that independent beauty consultant's goal of providing customized advice, the right products at the right time for her customer. The skin analyzer supports that in addition to the independent beauty consultant's product knowledge. So those are some of the examples of how we are making sure that the independent sales force has the business tools that they need to conduct their business basically anytime, anywhere.
I'm curious, you mentioned, over the last year and these tools that you have, and I can certainly see where they have had an impact and a level of importance that stepped up when we haven't been able to as readily be able to get together in person. Did you enter into those investments pre-pandemic era and see an acceleration? Oh, yes. Was it what did you see kind of in a before and after? And I'd love that if you could even expand a little bit about what you anticipate happening over the next 6 to 12 months as hopefully, knock on wood, we start to enter a new reality, how you see those tools and investments
Yeah.
continuing.
Yeah, yes. Mary Kay has always invested heavily in technology. And again, a lot of that would have not been consumer facing, but in support of the independent sales force in her business. But the investment in the apps, and also continuing to update them, making sure they had a social component, et cetera. Those are things that we actually identified as needs several years ago. And while there had been adoption of those tools, obviously, like many companies, it really took that hockey stick growth curve up, and the sales force immediately adapted to them. I think certainly as a business that was founded, if you will, on face-to-face relationships, for many that was preferred if it was an option. But the key here, it's about the relationship. And as the environment changed, the independent sales force really leveraged the tools to build on those relationships, maintain them, deepen them. There are so many amazing stories of individuals who said, wow, it was, my Mary Kay beauty consultant. She was the one who reached out to me, not to share products, but to ask how I was doing, to ask how she could help me. And I think that really does speak to the strength of the foundation of those relationships. They're really based on women understanding and getting to know other women first and foremost. So it's about a lot more than the makeup, if you will. Some of the things that we're spending more time and imagination on certainly are about how do you bring the excitement, the energy, the connectivity to a virtual event, because not only is that relevant for her selling situation, but so much of the engagement and encouragement of our independent sales force would typically happen at a big live event, whether it was our annual sales conference, our leadership events, yeah, product launch events in local communities, career development events. So much like the entertainment industry, the sports industry, we were literally within days and weeks of hosting large events of gathering hundreds and thousands of women in all different parts of the world. And we had to immediately not only put that on hold, but very quickly reinvent what that experience could potentially be, leveraging the digital tools and assets and platforms that we had access to. So it really inspired us to think about how do you make people feel important, feel recognized. And over the last year, every time we've produced an event, it just gets better and more exciting, and we're finding new ways to make sure that there's a sense of community in the environments. There was just a recent event over the weekend, and we had a whole social wall where we were running the tweets and the chats, so people had that sense of energy and conversation. For our independent national sales directors, we created an applause wall. So anytime someone had a special recognition, we were there with applause coming from all of the national leaders. So a lot of the innovation is not necessarily limited or solely tied to the functionality of technology, but it's how we're using it.
And to how you use it to maintain the cultural connections, I know is such an important part of your business, especially for the energy level for your sales team, your independent sales team. Yeah. Any other lessons? I could spend a couple hours, because I like many of us on this, and it's kind of meta, on this panel right now, or in this audience right now, we're sitting in front of our Zooms. We're leading our teams through Zoom meetings. We're trying to conduct sales meetings and customer events and things like that. So the tweet wall and the applause wall, I think are great little tips that I wrote down here as you were speaking. I want to circle back on something too. From a business model and from a channel perspective with your independent sales team, as you've invested more and more in some of these tools that have gone directly into the hands of the consumers, what kind of is it anxiety or skepticism or concern did you hear from your sales folks, and how did you help go through the change management of moving, with a world that was very much direct to consumer with a human to human connection, where digital was going to take more and more? What were some of the things that you did to help make sure that your sales team was comfortable with the types of changes and was bought in, if that's a fair way to put it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And certainly I don't want to leave an impression that the independent sales force wasn't willing to embrace a lot of technology. But as you pointed out, there is that point where, face to face, that's what Mary Kay Ash always told us. She said, hey, if you see a face, book it. So we always joke that we invented Facebook at Mary Kay. But to help the independent sales force see that the technology was not a replacement, but rather an enabler of a personal connection. One of the examples I remember using, and again, this goes back now more than 10 years, but in talking with some of the independent sales force leaders, I first of all talked to them about how they stayed connected with maybe their children at college or grandchildren, etc. And they said, of course I use, Facebook, or I FaceTime with them, etc. And I said, well, that's a really great example of how these tools are helping you stay close with someone you love, and when you can't be with them in person. And that kind of said, oh, wow, I never thought about it. And then that helped them become more comfortable and feeling that we weren't ever going to promote or encourage replacing face-to-face, but rather supplementing it with the help of tools. We also emphasize the importance of convenience, because a lot of our business model really does offer flexibility and convenience. It's not like a retail store that has set hours. An independent sales force member conducts her business and connects with her customers when it's mutually convenient for them. Here again, technology makes it convenient. If someone wants to leave a message on a personal website at 2 a.m. maybe after they were feeding the baby, they can do that. So we really presented and we think about technology in those very, I'll say, human moments. And the other factor that was also important was actually Mary Kay Ash herself, who always embraced what she felt would be best for the success of the sales force. By definition, she was an innovator. The business model that she created, that she launched at a time when women just didn't start their own business. In fact, there are stories, women didn't even buy their own cars. They, the car dealership would say, hey, bring your husband in and then we'll talk. So she had never hesitated to try something new if she thought it would be better. And it was really that same, spirit of, you try things, you learn as you go, that I think really helped the sales force feel that they weren't necessarily giving up or stepping away from something that was important. They were just finding new ways to build upon those relationships.
Well, and I'll use that example of modeling and just kind of tip of the hat to you as well. In doing my research for this conversation too, and we talked about this the other day, but I understand you're quite a prolific digital social media maven yourself. Is it Shoes Day Tuesday is the
yes, my shoe habit.
So you're modeling a lot of that social marketing and promotion and interaction. You mentioned that you have tools that you make available to your independent beauty consultants. When we talked, you mentioned kind of putting them in the driver's seat, if you will, of control. So your email channels, for example, your your IBCs have the ability to
They
decide.
can, yes,
go
they
ahead.
can opt in and leverage corporate content that's developed for them. And an example might be a beauty newsletter that announces a new product. And if the independent Salesforce member so chooses, she can opt in to have that content delivered to her customer base. Again, it is always about her choice. We want to make sure, though, that she has what she needs to look professional and also to use her time efficiently. And so that's basically uh, a resource that we provide to her for her use when she wants to use it.
Yeah, I can imagine, again, in terms of adoption, providing that level of empowerment and control and decision over her book of business, if you will, and her business. It's viewed as an asset rather than something that's, you know, kind of an imposition or something that's mandated from corporate
Exactly.
on high in Dallas. Yeah.
Never.
I'd love to talk for a minute. We've got about 5 left here. You and I had spoken about some of the causes that Mary Kay supports as a corporate entity, and you personally. And I'd love to talk about some of those causes that are near and dear to yours and the team's heart, and also to the extent that you provide digital infrastructure and help enable with that as well. What are some of the key things that that your team focuses on, that your company
Yeah.
focuses on?
Certainly, I'm very passionate about the 2 causes that the Mary Kay Foundation is committed to, and those causes are finding cures to cancers that impact women, and then secondly, ending domestic violence. And these are 2 causes that Mary Kay Ash felt very deeply about. She saw how both issues impact women and their families and wanted to do all that she could in an effort to address those issues. These are causes that also are at the heart, I think, of why so many independent beauty consultants love their business so much, because they also care about these causes and related issues in their local communities. So through their Mary Kay business, they are often able to make an impact, whether it's providing some level of support or perhaps pampering or encouragement at a local domestic violence shelter, maybe helping women who are recuperating from cancer treatments, etc. The foundation's work financially supports domestic shelters in all 50 states. And at this time, with so many women finding it even harder to get away or even share their need for help, it's particularly a pressing issue. So the work of the foundation is more important than ever. And likewise, the foundation has given millions of dollars in support of cancer research looking for cures. On a more recent note, another way that Mary Kay was also making an impact in the community was through our manufacturing site. When the COVID broke out and there was such a severe shortage of hand sanitizer, we were given authorization to manufacture a hand sanitizer. It wasn't something that we would normally produce, but once we were able to get permission, we basically went into action, and in basically about 10 days had gone into production with large supplies of hand sanitizer. We partnered with the Baylor Scott Foundation here in Dallas to arrange for how best to distribute that hand sanitizer where it might be most needed at the time. We were able to get a lot of the product to the frontline workers. We also made sure we were getting that same hand sanitizer to some of the domestic violence shelters who didn't necessarily have access. So again, this is not only something that the company and the employees are passionate about making an impact where we can, when we can, but it's a shared commitment with the independent sales force. And they themselves do a lot of exciting events to financially support the Mary Kay Foundation. So it's, again, the heart of Mary Kay is very much in our DNA.
I appreciate the good works, and I love the synergy and the congruence between the work of the foundation and how the empowerment of women from the mission standpoint, and then how it all comes full circle with the good works that you do. And I also am I was sitting here as you were remarking about the shift over of the manufacturing plant from cosmetics and skincare products to hand sanitizer in the course of 10 days. Wouldn't it be great if any corporate change that needed to be made could be done like that, with that quickly and turn on a dime?
Well, you know what? That it really has inspired us, and I certainly won't claim we can do everything on that, but we were really energized about how we were able to mobilize and make the decisions and empower the teams to move as quickly as possible. And that energy and confidence around our agility definitely carried through the year, not only here in Dallas, but in the individual markets. And, we could talk for probably another hour, all the stories about, the different ways that the employees, really rose to this occasion at this time. And we're going to keep that same energy as we're going into 21 and beyond. I think it really unleashed a lot more creativity. And, as I've shared with a lot of folks, when you know your purpose and you have that clear line of sight around why you are doing what you're doing, you can really do anything. And that was really what Mary Kay taught us. It was always about, you can do it.
And and having that experience validates it, and the bar can be set a lot higher than you might otherwise have.
Exactly. Have you never know till you try.
Yeah. I'm going to turn to the audience for some questions now. I see one in our chat here, and I'd encourage anyone who has questions for you, Cheryl, to please go ahead and type in the chat. That we're kind of carrying on the theme of good works here. On a related topic, can you tell us about your sustainability strategies and which goals is Mary Kay primarily focused on, and why?
Actually, that I wish that we were having this conversation just a little bit later this spring, because we are going to more formally be sharing our sustainability commitments. What I can share, and if you on Instagram follow the Mary Kay Global account, that's where we share a lot of what we're doing as it relates to partnering with the Nature Conservatory, the Arbor Day Foundation, things, those types of projects. And there, again, a lot of examples that we do share. We are also and have been focused on reducing the amount of plastic that goes into our packaging. And we've had a number of projects that we've implemented, and certainly there will be more in the future. Historically, things like our refillable compact have been one of the ways that at a time where most makeup compacts were being, thrown away when they were, maybe about halfway consumed, things like our customizable compact have actually been a way that we've been approaching things with more of a sustainable mindset. So not to totally evade the question, I would just welcome if folks would follow Mary Kay Global or check on marykay.com, where we publicize all of our partnerships with NGOs and other organizations, because we are committed, and it's really something that Mary Kay Ash often talked about, protecting the planet for our grandchildren.
That's great. I don't see any more questions in the chat. We've only got a couple more minutes here. I'll just ask you kind of one last one from my own curiosity. What are some of the lessons that you've learned, and maybe if you could think of one place where you might have skinned your knee and avoid for the next time, especially as it relates to the theme, winning the digital game. Anything that you're going to take forward into 2021 that if you had a do-over or a mulligan, you might have changed or done better? I know it's a little bit of a provocative question. I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I always maintain that if you've learned something, then it wasn't a total failure. So of course we learn along the way. I think most importantly, I can probably not underscore enough the value and importance of testing. And now with the capabilities we have, we really can test and learn so much faster, and also at perhaps a small enough scale that if maybe your message isn't right or the targeting wasn't right, you can quickly course correct. And given the nature of our business model, where we do know every customer by name, we don't really have, I'll say, room to make mistakes. We do have room to learn, though, and being able to learn at, in our case, at a small scale, or learn in different markets before expanding has been extremely valuable, and certainly something we're going to continue to do a lot more of, so that we can continue to innovate, but do it in a way that never disrupts the independent sales force, and in a way that always maintains their confidence, because their confidence in their business is fundamental to their success.
I love it, and I'm going to press you on what some of those learnings were at some point in the future. But
okay.
Cheryl,
you get a
really
rain check.
I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, and on behalf of the audience and Brand Innovators. I'll turn it back over to you, David. But this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Similar, likewise. Thank you, Eric.
David, you're muted, buddy.
It's always once a day hosting these. I always forget at least one time. We could have 8 speakers, and there'll be one time that I forget. But thank you guys, Cheryl, Eric. That was fantastic. We will have you back again soon, I hope. And this was wonderful. So cheers, and we'll continue with part 2 another time.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I love it.
Take care.
Take care. All right, and to everybody who tuned in today on YouTube and here on Zoom, thank you so much for tuning in, and keep your eyes peeled. As I mentioned, we have an epic 4-day virtual summit. We're calling it Brand Innovators Trend Watch in March, the 16th to the 19th, in lieu of our usual South by Southwest tentpole event in Austin every year. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for more on that. And on that note, have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week, everyone.